Hey everyone, and welcome back to Fact Check Simplified. Today, we're talking about that time when the internet was basically a dorm room startup with a business plan scribbled on a napkin that just said free stuff. Figure out money later. Think of it as the world's most optimistic potluck, where everyone brought their weirdest Geocities pages and nobody was asked to chip in for the keg. This whole digital mess, this glorious, infuriating ecosystem of subscriptions that won't die and cancel buttons, that hide like they ray in witness protection, it all started here. In an era of pure, uncut, dial-up toned idealism, we're about to untangle an economic and technological not so messy. It makes your headphone cables look like a triumph of organizational design before the inevitable corporate betrayal starts. If you enjoy this highly dramatic but fun version of modern facts, please hit that like and subscribe button. Seriously, it helps us pay the electric bill for our overpriced standing desks. All right, grab an iced latte. Things are about to get unnecessarily infuriating. Let's rewind the clock. Back to a time of glorious, pixelated innocence. The late 90s and early 2000s. The internet wasn't a sleek, corporate-run megamall. It was a chaotic, charming, and profoundly weird digital frontier. It was a place built by academics, hobbyists, and dreamers who genuinely believed they were creating a global village. Information, they declared, wanted to be free. And for a glorious moment, it actually was. You could read news, send emails, chat with strangers about your Beanie Baby collection, and download fuzzy JPEGs of your favorite celebrity, all for the low price of your parents' patience with the screeching dial-up modem. The business model was simple. There wasn't one. The goal was eyeballs, get people to look, and surely, somehow, money would follow. It was the digital equivalent to Field of Dreams if you build it. They will come. And if they come, someone, somewhere, will figure out how to sell them something. This was the golden age of free. A beautiful, naive, and completely unsustainable fantasy. The core promise was seductive. You, the user, are the guest of honor. Everything we build is for you. Your access is the only currency we need. It was a utopia funded by venture capital and vibes. But vibes don't pay for server farms. The architects of this new world quickly realized they had built a bustling metropolis with no tax system. They needed cash. But how do you ask people to pay for something you've spent years telling them is, and always will be, free? You don't. You find someone else to foot the bill. Enter the advertiser. The solution seemed so elegant, so simple. Companies would pay to put little billboards, banner ads on the digital highways. The websites would get paid, the users would get free content, and the advertisers would get customers. Everybody wins, right? This was the foundational myth upon which the modern internet was built. A promise that aged about as well as milk left in a hot car. The first ever banner ad appeared on Hotwired. COM in 1994. It was a psychedelic little rectangle for AT&T that asked, "Have you ever clicked your mouse right here?" You will. And you know what? A shocking 44% of people who saw it did .40% It was a miracle. It was new. It was intriguing. It was a button on the magic information box. For a brief, shining moment, it seemed like the model worked. The cheerful banner ad was going to be the benevolent patron of our digital renaissance, quietly funding our exploration from the sidelines. But humanity, in its infinite wisdom, is exceptionally good at one thing: ignoring things that are trying to sell its stuff. This phenomenon, soon dubbed banner blindness, kicked in almost immediately. Our brains, masterful filtering machines, learned to see a webpage not as a whole, but as content surrounded by annoying rectangles to be ignored. Click-through rates plummeted from that miraculous 44% into the single digits, then fractions of a percent. The dream was dying. The ads weren't working. The free utopia was hemorrhaging money. So, the advertisers and the platforms they were funding panicked. This led to a crucial and catastrophic escalation. The simple, static banner ad was deemed impolite, too easy to ignore. It needed to get in your face. Cause the gentle, ignorable banner ad was failing to generate enough revenue to support the free everything model. Gives effect. Advertisers, desperate for attention, invented the pop-up ad. A shrieking, page-obscuring monstrosity that hijacked your screen and demanded your attention. Gives consequence. This didn't create happy customers. It created a user base filled with incandescent rage. It shattered the illusion that the user was the guest of honor and recast them as the target. The arms race had begun. Users installed pop-up blockers. Advertisers designed ads that evaded the blockers. The user experience, once the sacred goal, was now the primary casualty in a desperate war for clicks. This was the first great betrayal. The moment the internet stopped being a library and started being a flea market where every vendor is screaming at you through a megaphone, the promise of a clean, well-lit space for information was being buried under an avalanche of digital garbage. You went online to read an article and ended up in a digital minefield, dodging flashing ads for diet pills, mortgage refinancing, and lonely singles in your area. The meta commentary here writes itself. The system was fundamentally broken from the start. It was built on a flawed assumption that you could capture human attention without degrading it. That advertising could be a silent partner instead of an obnoxious overlord. The dream of a purely ad-supported free internet wasn't just a bad business model, it was a deeply naive misreading of both capitalism and human nature. It created a system where the incentive wasn't to create the best content, but the most aggressive ad delivery mechanism. The user wasn't the customer, they were the product being sold to the advertiser. And we were all about to find out just how much we were worth. To make the ads work better, they couldn't just shout louder. They had to get smarter. They needed to know what you liked, what you feared, what you desired. They needed a way to watch you. They needed a spy. And so, from the unassuming back rooms of early web development, a tiny, unassuming file was summoned to be that spy. It wasn't born evil. Like most of history's greatest villains, it started with a simple, practical, almost noble purpose. It was called the HTTP cookie, and describing it as a cookie was a stroke of marketing genius, making a piece of tracking code sound as harmless and delightful as something your grandma would bake. It wasn't a cookie, it was a digital breadcrumb, a tiny text file left on your computer by a website. Its original job was to solve one of the internet's most fundamental problems, its crippling amnesia. The early web was stateless, which is a technical way of saying it had the memory of a goldfish that had just suffered a significant head trauma. Every single time you clicked a link or loaded a new page, the server had absolutely no idea who you were or what you had just done. It was like meeting someone new every 3 seconds. This made basic things, like online shopping, a complete impossibility. You'd put a book in your virtual shopping cart, click to the next page to browse for another, and poof, your cart was empty. The server had already forgotten you existed. It was chaos. The cookie was the cure. It was a simple ID tag. The website would give your browser a cookie with a unique number, and on your next visit, your browser would show the website that cookie. The website would go, number 78B4, I remember you. Your book is still in your cart. Simple, elegant, incredibly useful. This is the first-party cookie. It's the digital equivalent of a friendly bartender who remembers your usual drink. It enhances the experience, it creates continuity, and it's a relationship strictly between you and the establishment you're currently in. For a while, this was all it was, a tool of convenience, a digital handshake. Nobody could have predicted that this innocent little handshake would evolve into a full-body cavity search, conducted by 1,000 strangers simultaneously. The benevolent bartender didn't stay benevolent for long, because the advertisers peering through the window realized they could get in on the action. The pivot from convenience to surveillance happened with the birth of the third-party cookie. This is where the story takes its dark turn. See, the ads on a webpage weren't usually hosted by the webpage itself. They were fed in from massive AD networks. And these ad networks realized something revolutionary. If their server beamed an ad onto 1,000 different websites, their server could also place its own cookie on your computer from each of those sites. Suddenly, the relationship wasn't just between you and the news site you were reading. It was now between you and adtech_network_x, an entity you'd never heard of and never agreed to interact with. This was the masterstroke, the digital Trojan horse. You visit a blog about gardening. An ad network places a cookie. You then go to a site to buy shoes. The same ad network serves an ad there, sees its own cookie, and makes a note. User 78B4 likes gardening and is a size 10 in sneakers. Then you visit a travel site. The network sees the cookie again. Update on 78B4 gardens. Where's size 10 is now looking at flights to Miami. This process repeated across tens of thousands of websites. A silent, invisible dragnet building a shockingly detailed profile of your habits, your interests, your income level, your political leanings, and your deepest insecurities, all tied to a supposedly anonymous ID number. The innocent digital biscuit designed to remember your shopping cart had become a full-time surveillance agent, filing daily reports on your every click to a shadowy corporate conglomerate. Cause ad networks realized they could place their own third-party cookies on any site that ran their ads. Gives effect, they could now track a single user's browsing habits not just on one site, but across a vast, interconnected web of thousands of sites, stitching together a comprehensive behavioral profile. Gives consequence, this birthed the multi-billion-dollar ad tech industry, an economy built entirely on harvesting, packaging, and selling user data to advertisers without the user's meaningful consent or even their knowledge. The free internet now had a price tag, and that price was your privacy. The meta commentary here is almost too painful to articulate. We were rats in a digital maze, and the scientists weren't just watching us, they were selling tickets to our every move. This entire surveillance architecture was built quietly in the background, while we were all distracted by dancing baby gifs and the novelty of being able to order a pizza online. There was no public debate, no vote, it just happened. A small cabal of engineers and ad executives fundamentally re-engineered the nature of public information, turning a global library into the world's most efficient surveillance machine. And for what? So that after you buy a lawnmower, you can be haunted for the next 3 weeks by ads for the exact same lawnmower you just bought. It's not even good surveillance, it's just pervasive. A quick snapshot to curdle your blood. By the mid-2000s, major data brokers were boasting profiles on hundreds of millions of people, each with thousands of data points. From your recent purchases to your likelihood of divorce, the cookie monster had been unleashed. And it wasn't just hungry for cookies, it was hungry for every last scrap of your digital identity. But here's the most absurd part of all. Even with this unprecedented level of psychographic targeting, click-through rates on ads remained stubbornly, embarrassingly low. The banner blindness was still too strong. Knowing everything about a user didn't matter if you couldn't get them to look. The surveillance made the aim better, but the gun was still firing blanks. The advertisers weren't just getting desperate anymore, they were getting angry. They had built the perfect tracking system, and it still wasn't enough. They needed to escalate. They needed to move from silent observation to aggressive, unavoidable confrontation. So, the advertisers were furious. They had built the world's most sophisticated peeping Tom network, meticulously cataloging our every desire and digital footstep, and yet we, the ungrateful public, continued to stubbornly ignore their little rectangular pleas for our money. The data was perfect, the targeting was laser-focused, but the human brain remained undefeated in its ability to just not look. It was like having the blueprints to a bank vault, but being unable to convince the guards to turn around. They had tried asking nicely. They had tried observing quietly. Now, it was time to kick down the door. If we wouldn't give them our attention willingly, they would take it by force. This was the moment the Cold War for our eyeballs turned hot. This was the beginning of the adpocalypse. Cue the pop-up ad, a creation of such pure, unadulterated annoyance that its inventor, Ethan Zuckerman, has spent the better part of his adult life publicly apologizing for it. It is, without exaggeration, one of the most hated inventions in the history of human-computer interaction, sitting somewhere on the list between Microsoft's Clippy and the spinning beach ball of death. Its genius was its brutality. It wasn't an ad on a page, it was a new page in itself. A digital mugger that leaped out from a dark alley, blocking your path and demanding you look at it. It hijacked your screen, your focus, and your will to live, all to tell you about a mortgage deal you didn't want or a casino you can legally play at. The pop-up fundamentally changed the user's relationship with the web. Before, you were the driver. You chose where to go, what to click. The pop-up ripped the steering wheel out of your hands. It was a declaration that your experience was secondary to the advertiser's needs, the original sin. Zuckerman's monster was created to solve a very specific problem. A car company was buying ads on a tripod, Compage, a site famous for user-generated content, and they were horrified that their family-friendly minivan ad might appear next to, well, let's just say less family-friendly content. Zuckerman's solution was to have the ad load in a separate window, an elegant, technical fix, and in doing so, he unleashed a plague upon the world. The internet's original sin wasn't just a free model, it was the chain reaction of terrible solutions, designed to prop it up. What followed was not just an escalation, it was a Cambrian explosion of digital pestilence. The pop-up was merely the apex predator that cleared the way for a whole ecosystem of horrors. We got the pop under, its sneakier cousin that would hide behind your main browser window, waiting to ambush you the moment you thought you were safe. We got the floating, layer-based ads that you couldn't scroll past. We got ads with tiny, impossible-to-click X buttons that, if you missed by a single pixel, would open 3 more windows in a terrifying, Hydra-like display of defiance. My personal favorite, the ad with a fake close button that was actually a link to download malware. It was a masterclass in user hostile design. The internet, once a promising frontier, had become a digital swamp, thick with flashing, buzzing, CPU-devouring annoyances. Naturally, the public did not take this lying down. The adpocalypse triggered a massive, grassroots rebellion. This was the birth of the ad blocker. Software like AdBlock Plus wasn't just a utility, it was a weapon of self-defense. It was the digital equivalent of putting on noise-canceling headphones. In a room full of screaming toddlers, millions of people downloaded these tools, empowering themselves to reclaim their screens and their sanity. For a moment, it felt like victory. The people had fought back against the corporate machine and won, but corporations do not like losing. The ad tech industry didn't see the rise of ad blockers as a sign that perhaps their core product was deeply and fundamentally loathed. They saw it as a technical problem to be solved, an obstacle to be rooted around, cause the sheer, unbearable intrusiveness of pop-up ads and their variants drove millions of users to install ad-blocking software. Gives effect, ad revenue for publishers plummeted, creating a panic. In response, ad tech companies and websites began developing anti-ad blocker technology. Gives consequence, this ignited a full-blown technological arms race. Ad blockers got smarter at identifying and hiding ads. Ads got smarter at disguising themselves as regular content to evade the blockers. Websites started putting up walls, demanding you disable your ad blocker to view their content, turning access into a hostage negotiation. The user was caught in the crossfire, punished for trying to create a usable online experience for themselves. The meta commentary here is a scream into the void. The entire industry was built on a foundation of sand, and their solution was to bring in more sand. Instead of saying, wow, our entire business model is so irritating that people are actively downloading software to destroy it, maybe we should rethink things, they doubled down. The guiding principle became coercion, not persuasion. The dream of the benevolent advertiser funding a digital utopia was officially dead, replaced by a grim reality where websites treated their own users as adversaries to be outsmarted. The adpocalypse wasn't just an aesthetic nightmare, it was a philosophical breaking point. It proved that in the ad-supported model, when the interests of the user and the interests of the advertiser conflict, the user will lose. Every single time. The flashing, unclosable windows were a symptom of a much deeper disease, a business model that fundamentally depended on being annoying. And as the internet groaned under the weight of this endless conflict, a new idea was gaining traction. A cleaner, more respectable sounding way to pay the bills. One that promised to save us all from the ad-infested swamp. Into this digital hellscape of screaming pop-ups and user-hostile design, a hero emerged, or at least, a company with a marketing department brilliant enough to cast itself as one. While the rest of the internet was descending into a flashing, seizure-inducing nightmare of casino ads and miracle weight loss solutions, one website looked different. It was calm, it was clean, it was an ocean of serene white space with a single, simple search bar. It didn't shout at you, it didn't try to sell you anything, it just waited, patiently, for you to ask it a question. This was Google, and its arrival felt less like a product launch and more like a spiritual cleansing, compared to the cluttered, ad-choked portals of the era like Yahoo and Alta Vista. Google's homepage was a masterpiece of minimalist rebellion. It was a quiet library in the middle of a monster truck rally. And to complete the image of digital sainthood, the company adopted a motto so simple, so audacious, it was either an act of pure genius or staggering arrogance. Don't be evil. 3 words. That was the pitch. In a digital world built on deception and annoyance, here was a company explicitly promising to be the good guy. It was the most effective marketing slogan of the 21st century because it wasn't a slogan, it was a moral declaration. It told us, we're different. We're on your side. And for a while, we believed them. We had to. The alternative was to go back to the pop-up swamp. Google's genius wasn't just its clean interface or its high-minded motto. It was that they had actually solved the advertising problem. That created the adpocalypse in the first place. They figured out how to make ads that people didn't hate. In fact, they made ads that were useful. The innovation was AdWords, and its premise was revolutionary, relevance, instead of blasting you with random, irrelevant garbage. Google would show you simple, text-based ads that were directly related to what you were searching for. You search for best running shoes, you get a discrete link to a shoe store. You search for plumbers in Brooklyn, you get an ad for a local plumber. It wasn't an interruption, it was a continuation of your search. It was advertising disguised as a helpful result. They hadn't just built a better mousetrap, they had convinced the mice that the trap was actually a complimentary cheese delivery service. But how did they make the ads so frighteningly relevant? This is the heart of the bargain. This is where the free model shows its teeth. They did it by creating the most sophisticated human behavior prediction machine the world has ever known. Every single search query you typed into that clean, friendly box was a tiny confession. How to get over a breakup, affordable therapist near me, symptoms of a heart attack. How to hide a body. We told Google our deepest fears, our secret ambitions, our medical anxieties, our financial troubles, our fleeting curiosities. We were feeding in a real time, unvarnished stream of the human psyche. The search engine wasn't just organizing the world's information, it was organizing our information about us for them. Cause Google provided a vastly superior, clean, and free search engine that quickly became the world's default gateway to the internet. Gives effect, this centralized the flow of human curiosity, giving Google an unprecedented firehose of raw data representing the real-time intentions, desires, and problems of billions of people. Gives consequence, they leverage this data to build a hyper-targeted advertising empire, auctioning off our intent to the highest bidder under the guise of relevant results, effectively turning our private thoughts into their public commodity. The meta commentary is almost a perfect. The "don't be evil" mantra was the ultimate shield. It was a piece of moral camouflage that allowed Google to construct the largest surveillance apparatus in human history. While we all applauded them for it, the evil we were all worried about, the flashy, annoying, in-your-face evil of the pop-up ad, was just a distraction. The real evil, the more profound and lasting evil, was the one that was quiet, seamless, and incredibly helpful. It was the evil that knew you were thinking about buying a new car before you had even mentioned it to your spouse. It was the evil that made surveillance feel like a service. Google didn't destroy the ad-supported model, they perfected it. They laundered its reputation. They took a dirty business, put it in a clean white suit, and taught it to speak our language. And then they expanded. Each new free service was another, deeper tap into our lives. Gmail scanned the contents of our private emails to serve us ads. A snapshot that should chill you. A 2017 announcement that they would stop this practice for ad personalization was met with a collective, "Wait, you were doing that?" Yes, they were. Google Maps tracked our physical movements. Google Chrome, the browser itself, monitored every single website we visited. Each product was a masterpiece of utility, a genuinely useful tool that we eagerly adopted. And each one was a new tentacle for the data collection kraken, wrapping itself ever more tightly around our digital lives. They weren't just a search engine anymore, they were building a complete, cradle-to-grave profile of their users. The golden age of free wasn't over. It had just found its infinitely profitable, quietly terrifying champion. But even Google's silent, invisible panopticon was about to look quaint. A new type of platform was coming, one that wouldn't have to infer our desires from search queries. It would convince us to hand over our entire lives, willingly and for free. If Google was the quiet, unnervingly perceptive librarian meticulously cataloging your every whispered request, social media was the town square where everyone was handed a megaphone and encouraged to scream their diary pages to the entire world. It was louder, it was messier, and its method of data collection was infinitely more insidious because we didn't see it as collection at all, we called it sharing. The architects of this new world, Zuckerberg and his contemporaries, understood something even more profound than the Googlers. You don't need to build a complex machine to infer what people are thinking. If you can create a stage so seductive, so intoxicating, that people will line up to tell you themselves, voluntarily, enthusiastically, for free. This was the Faustian bargain of the social media era, and we signed it in digital blood without even reading the terms of service. The deal was simple. We give you a platform to cure your loneliness, to reconnect with your high school crush, to brag about your promotion, and to feel the warm, validating glow of social approval. In exchange, you give us everything. Your name, your birthday, your face, your friends, your family, your relationship status, your political affiliation, your favorite movies, the photos of your kids, the location of your vacation, everything. It was the single greatest heist of personal information in human history. And we were the willing, cheerful accomplices. We weren't just the victims. We were the getaway drivers. The genius of it was psychological. These platforms weren't pitched as data mining operations. They were pitched as communities, as digital mirrors reflecting our best, most curated selves. Enter the news feed, a scrolling, infinite slot machine of social validation. Every post was a pull of the lever. Would it be likes, comments, a laughing emoji? It was a perfectly engineered dopamine feedback loop. And then came the master stroke, the like button, a single, frictionless click that quantified our social capital. It turned human connection into a game, and we all became desperate to win. We weren't just sharing moments, we were performing our lives for an invisible audience. And the platform was the silent producer, taking notes on every single prop, every line of dialogue, every emotional reaction from the crowd. We were so busy building our digital personas that we never stopped to ask what the platform was building with the raw materials we were giving it. While we were carefully selecting the perfect photo filter, they were filtering us into marketable categories: engaged, single, new parent, high net worth individual, likely to move, interested in pseudoscience. Google had to guess our interests based on our searches. Facebook knew our interests because we listed them in detail right on our profiles. We weren't just users, we were unpaid data entry clerks for our own psychological profiles. The scale of this willing self-surveillance is staggering. 1 billion people decided, collectively, that their vacation photos and political rants were a fair trade for their fundamental right to privacy. Cause social media platforms created a free service that masterfully fulfilled a deep-seated human need for connection, community, and social validation. Gives effect. Billions of users voluntarily uploaded an unprecedented volume of personal, demographic, and psychographic data, their friend networks, life events, political views, and daily moods, creating the richest and most detailed dataset on human behavior ever assembled. Gives consequence. This data was monetized through micro-targeting, allowing advertisers and political operatives to aim messages with terrifying precision, exploiting our documented emotional states, insecurities, and social connections for commercial and political gain, all while we were distracted by engagement announcements and cat videos. The meta commentary is a tragicomedy. We put deadbolts on our doors and installed security cameras, then went online and broadcasted to 1,000 friends and their advertisers that we'd be out of the country for 2 weeks. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. The value exchange was a joke. A multi-$100 billion corporation was built on the back of our baby pictures and breakup statuses, and what did we get in return? The ability to argue with our uncle about politics, and a creeping sense of anxiety that everyone else's life was better than ours. This wasn't a fair deal, it was a swindle disguised as a party. Here's your snapshot of the betrayal in action: the Cambridge Analytica scandal. A political consulting firm harvested the personal data of up to 87 million Facebook users without their consent. By using a seemingly harmless personality quiz app, they didn't just get the data of the people who took the quiz, they got the data of their entire friend networks. They then used this data to build detailed psychological profiles, to target voters with manipulative political advertising. This was the moment the mask slipped. It proved that our data wasn't just being used to sell us sneakers, it was being used to influence elections, to manipulate public opinion, to weaponize our own personalities against us. The friendly town square was revealed to be a laboratory for social engineering. The ads weren't the only problem anymore. The entire business model was a threat. And as the public started to grow uneasy with the adpocalypse and the great data heist, a new, cleaner-sounding solution was about to be pushed as the great digital savior. The digital town square was officially a crime scene. Cambridge Analytica had ripped the friendly mask off social media, revealing the snarling, manipulative data broker underneath. The adpocalypse had turned the rest of the web into an uninhabitable, flashing wasteland. The public, finally, was getting mad. We had been promised a global village and instead got a global surveillance state that also tried to sell us diet pills. Trust in the free model was at an all-time low. We felt used, spied on, and frankly, just deeply annoyed. The market was screaming for an escape route, a safe harbor from the storm of data harvesting and psychological manipulation. And right on cue, a new gospel began to spread through Silicon Valley, preached by a new wave of digital evangelists. The gospel of the subscription. It was pitched as salvation, and the timing was perfect. The subscription model swooped in like a superhero, promising to cleanse the internet of its original sin. The pitch was so clean, so refreshingly simple, you could eat off it. Tired of being the product? It asked, soothingly. Tired of your data being sold to the highest bidder? Tired of ads that follow you around the web like a desperate ex? We have the solution. Just pay us. Pay us a small, reasonable fee every month, and we'll make it all go away. It was a direct, honest-to-God transaction. Money for a service. No hidden clauses, no secret tracking, no funny business. You weren't the product being sold anymore. You were the customer. You were the king. It was a revolution in respect. This wasn't just a business model. It was a moral crusade. Companies like Netflix and Spotify became the poster children for this new, ethical internet. For a flat monthly fee, you got a vast library of movies or music, completely uninterrupted by commercials. Remember the alternative: cable TV, with its 18 minutes of ads per hour, or the wild west of music piracy, where every MP3 download of a Britney Spears song came with a complimentary Russian keylogger virus. Compared to that chaos, the subscription felt like a serene, walled garden. A premium sanctuary. You paid your entry fee, and inside, everything was clean, orderly, and designed purely for your enjoyment. It was the digital promised land, and we ran to it. We stampeded towards it, our wallets wide open. Finally, a way to participate in the digital world without feeling like we needed a shower afterward. It felt good to pay for something of value. It felt adult. It felt clean. The psychological genius of the subscription model's rise was that it positioned itself as the ethical consumer's choice. Paying for a service became a vote against the creepy, ad-supported surveillance machine. You weren't just buying a subscription to a newspaper, you were supporting quality journalism. You weren't just paying for a streaming service, you were funding creative freedom. It was the perfect antidote to our collective digital guilt. But here's the thing about a gold rush: it doesn't stay pure for long. The subscription model wasn't just a hit with consumers. It was an absolute godsend for investors and corporate strategists. Wall Street adores subscriptions. Why? Because it represents predictable, recurring revenue. An advertiser might pull their budget tomorrow, but a subscriber, locked into auto-renew, is a golden goose that lays a small, dependable egg every single month. This realization sent a shockwave through every industry. The race was on. Every company, from software giants to razor startups, looked at the subscription model and saw the future. A future where they didn't have to sell you something once. They could sell it to you forever. Cause the subscription model offered companies a highly valued, predictable, recurring revenue stream, making them darlings of Wall Street and VCs. Gives effect, this created a frantic, industry-wide pivot. Every conceivable product or service, from word processors and photo editors to meal kits and even car features like heated seats, was repackaged as a monthly or annual subscription. Gives consequence, the premium sanctuary of one or two key subscriptions was shattered. Consumers were suddenly drowning in a sea of dozens of small, painless monthly charges, creating a complex and often invisible financial drain. The promise of simplicity and control was replaced by the reality of 1,000 tiny financial leeches, each one easy to acquire and devilishly hard to remove. The noble, ad-free alternative had a dark side. The gilded cage was being constructed around us, and it was so comfortable we didn't even notice the bars. The meta commentary is a gut punch of irony. We fled a system that exploited our attention, only to embrace a system that exploited our apathy. The business model wasn't built on delivering value every month. It was built on the statistical certainty that you would forget you were paying for it. It relied on our collective inability to manage our own finances, our aversion to the hassle of canceling, and our general life is too short to find that unsubscribe link inertia. A quick snapshot: a 2021 study showed that the average consumer underestimates their monthly subscription spend by nearly $133. We were bleeding money and didn't even know it. The honest transaction had become a bet that we wouldn't be paying attention. The digital savior had a dirty little secret. The sanctuary was just a different, more elegantly designed trap, and it was about to get a lot more crowded. The subscription model wasn't just a new way to pay for things. It was a full-blown consumer revolution. And nowhere was the battle fought more fiercely than in our living rooms. The enemy was a lumbering, universally despised behemoth, the cable company. For decades, it held us hostage. We paid a king's ransom every month for a package of 500 channels, of which we watched maybe 7. The other 493 were a baffling collection of 24-hour shopping networks, public access channels broadcasting town hall meetings, and 3 different channels exclusively dedicated to fishing. It was the ultimate example of consumer abuse, a bloated, one-size-fits-none bundle, delivered with customer service so legendarily awful it became a cultural punchline. Then came the Liberator, the giant slayer, a little upstart that started by mailing DVDs in red envelopes and then pivoted to something that sounded like science fiction: streaming, Netflix. Its proposition was a declaration of war against the cable monopoly. For one low monthly price, you get a massive library of movies and TV shows. Watch what you want, when you want. No ads, no contracts, no hidden fees. No calling a surly representative to schedule a technician who will maybe show up sometime between Tuesday and the next solar eclipse. It was freedom. It was control. Cutting the cord became a rallying cry, a glorious act of consumer rebellion. We weren't just canceling a service, we were sticking it to the man. For a brief, shining period, let's call it the golden age of streaming, the system worked. It was perfect. For about $10 a month, you had Friends, The Office, the entire Disney catalog, and a growing library of original content. It was the promised land. We had slain the single, expensive cable bundle and replaced it with a single, affordable streaming service. We had won. We were so proud of ourselves, so blissfully unaware that we were celebrating on the deck of a sinking ship. Because the old empires, the Disneys, the Warner Brothers, the Universals were watching. They watched us cancel our cable subscriptions in droves. They watched us flock to Netflix. And they didn't see a revolution. They saw their own content making another company outrageously rich, and they decided, almost in unison, wait a minute, we want some of that recurring revenue. This was the moment the dream died. The media giants, the very ones who made up the bloated cable bundle we hated, realized they didn't need to fight the subscription model. They needed to join it, and they had the ultimate leverage. They owned the content. They were the ones who had made the shows and movies we were all binging. So, one by one, they came for their toys. Disney announced it was pulling all its Marvel and Star Wars movies to launch its own service, Disney Plus. Universal clawed back The Office, the single most streamed show in history, as the crown jewel for its new platform, Peacock. Warner Bros. Snatched Friends back for what would eventually become Max. The great unified library was being systematically dismantled. The one-stop shop was being firebombed and looted by its own suppliers. This was the great unbundling. The beautiful, simple sanctuary we had fled to was being carved up into a dozen warring fiefdoms, each one demanding its own tribute. Cause legacy media conglomerates, envious of Netflix's success and desperate for their own recurring revenue streams, decided to reclaim their valuable intellectual property. Gives effect, they pulled their content from established platforms like Netflix and Hulu to launch their own exclusive, competing streaming services, shattering the centralized content library consumers had grown to love. Gives consequence, this forced consumers into a frustrating game of whack-a-mole. To watch the shows they loved, they had to subscribe to a multitude of different services, effectively rebundling their own entertainment package at a potentially higher total cost, and with far less convenience than the original cable bundle they had so gleefully abandoned. The irony is so thick you could choke on it. We joyfully cut the cord on one expensive, all-in-one bundle, only to immediately turn around and enthusiastically sign up for 10 different, slightly less expensive, not-in-one-place bundles. We thought we were buying freedom, but what we actually bought was the full-time, unpaid job of being our own cable package manager. We now had to juggle 5 different apps, 5 different passwords, and 5 different billing cycles. We had to remember which service had which show this month, a task made impossible by the fact that content was now bouncing between platforms like a digital nomad. The beautiful simplicity was gone, replaced by a fragmented, confusing, and increasingly expensive mess. A snapshot for your wallet. By 2024, the average American household was spending over $60 a month on streaming services, a number climbing so fast it was practically chasing down the cost of the old cable bill. We had run a full marathon just to end up exactly where we started. Only now we had more apps and a vague sense of having been scammed. The dream of liberation had devolved into a death by 1,000 digital cuts, and this philosophy, this insidious idea that you should never own anything when you could rent it forever, was about to escape the living room and infect everything. The infection had breached containment. The rent it forever philosophy, born in the ad tech labs, perfected by Google, weaponized by social media, and gentrified by streaming services, was now airborne. It escaped the confines of our entertainment and came for something far more fundamental: our tools, the very software we use to work, to create, to function in a modern society. This was the moment the subscription hydra stopped being a creature we could ignore after turning off the TV and became an inescapable part of our daily lives. This was the great ification of everything, and it was a masterclass in convincing us to pay more for less. Let's take a moment to remember the before times, the ancient, dusty era of 2008. If you needed powerful software, say for editing photos or writing a novel, you did something truly radical. You bought it. You drove to a physical store, a Best Buy or a CompUSA, and you purchased a box. A big, heavy, satisfyingly solid box containing a CD-ROM, or maybe even a whole stack of them, and a user manual thick enough to stop a small caliber bullet. You took it home, you installed it, and then it was yours. Forever, it was an asset. A tool in your digital toolbox that you owned, outright. Nobody could take it away from you. Sure, in a couple of years a new version would come out with more features, and you might choose to upgrade. But you didn't have to if you were perfectly happy with Photoshop 7. You could keep using Photoshop 7 until your computer literally dissolved into dust. This was the world of the perpetual license, the world of ownership. Then, the pitchfork-wielding villagers of Silicon Valley came for that world. They told us our way was old, clunky, and inefficient. They presented a new model, wrapped in the shimmering language of convenience and modernity, software as a service, or SaaS. The pitch was intoxicating. Why pay $600 for a box of software that will be obsolete in 2 years? They asked, their voices dripping with logic. Why go through the hassle of installations and managing license keys? Instead, just pay a small, manageable fee every month. For the price of a few fancy coffees, you'll always have the latest, most powerful version. We'll update it constantly, seamlessly, in the background. Your software will never be out of date again. It's all in the cloud, it's effortless, it's the future, and we bought it. We bought it hook, line, and sinker because it sounded like a better deal. It felt like progress. It was not progress. It was the most brilliant financial trap ever laid for the global middle class. The low monthly fee was a psychological anesthetic designed to make the actual cost feel painless. Let's do the ugly math they hoped we'd never do. That $600 box of Adobe Photoshop you bought. If you used it for 5 years, it costs you $120 a year. The shiny new Adobe Creative Cloud subscription for just that one app, it's over $20 a month. That's $140 a year, double the price. Over the same 5 years, you haven't paid $600. You've paid $1,100. And at the end of it, you own absolutely nothing. The moment you stop paying, the software deactivates. It's gone. Your tools are revoked. It's not a tool you own. It's a tool you are granted permission to use. And that permission is contingent on your perpetual payment. This wasn't an accident. It was the entire point. Adobe and Microsoft, the twin titans of productivity software, led the charge. They saw the rivers of gold flowing from recurring revenue and made a calculated decision to turn off the perpetual license spigot. Companies like Adobe and Microsoft realized that the one-time purchase model was finite. They could sell a customer a product once, but a subscription could milk that same customer forever. Gives effect, they aggressively transitioned their flagship products, like Adobe Creative Suite and Microsoft Office, into mandatory subscription-only models. Branded as Creative Cloud and Microsoft 365, they stopped selling the boxes. They gave customers no other choice. Gives consequence, this move fundamentally transformed the user's relationship with their own tools. From one of ownership to one of perpetual tenancy. It created a state of digital feudalism where creators, students, and businesses became serfs on corporate land, forced to pay a lifelong rent for access to the very software necessary to do their jobs, or risk losing access to their own work, saved in proprietary formats. The meta commentary here is just a long, exasperated sigh. We were conned into trading ownership for serfdom and called it convenience. We are now paying a lifelong tax for the privilege of using a glorified notepad and a digital spreadsheet. The model is a triumph of capitalism, designed to extract the maximum possible lifetime value from every single customer. The software doesn't even have to get significantly better year after year anymore. They don't need to convince you to upgrade. They just need to make sure you don't cancel. And this philosophy spread like wildfire. Your to-do list app, your calendar, your note-taking app, your password manager, suddenly everything that used to be a one-time purchase or a free utility now demanded its own monthly tithe. We were rebuilding the bloated cable bundle, but with productivity software instead of phishing channels. And the corporations behind this revolution knew that getting us to sign up was only half the battle. The real dark art was in ensuring that once we were in, we could never, ever get out. So, the software that ran our lives now ran on a meter. And the streaming services we loved were multiplying like rabbits. The beautiful, simple subscription sanctuary had become a crowded, expensive, and deeply confusing slum. And the landlords of this new digital tenement, the SaaS giants, the streaming kings, the meal kit startups, all face the same terrifying problem: churn. Churn is the corporate boogeyman, the metric that keeps CEOs awake at night. It's the percentage of subscribers who cancel their service in a given period. To Wall Street, A high churn rate is a flashing red siren that your product is a leaky bucket. And in the subscription economy, you don't just have to be good at getting customers, you have to be a master at preventing them from leaving. This existential terror of the cancel button gave birth to a new, dark art form. It wasn't engineering, it wasn't marketing, it was a perversion of both. A discipline of applied psychology dedicated to making websites and apps as user-friendly as a labyrinth designed by MC Escher on a bad day. They call it dark patterns. And the name, for once, is not an exaggeration. A dark pattern isn't a mistake. It's not a poorly designed button. It is a user interface that has been carefully, deliberately, and maliciously crafted to trick you into doing things you didn't mean to do, like buying insurance you don't need or signing up for a newsletter you don't want. But its highest and most sinister application is in the art of trapping you in a subscription you no longer desire. Enter the Roach Motel principle. A term so perfectly descriptive, it should be taught in business schools. The sign-up processes. The 5-star hotel lobby. It's a glorious, frictionless red carpet. The buttons are huge, brightly colored, and screaming with joyful words like "Start your free trial" or "Join now." They'll autofill your information, save your credit card with a single click, and welcome you to the family with a shower of digital confetti. It's a seamless to-click process. You check in. The cancellation process, however, is not in the lobby. It's through a series of unmarked doors in the basement past a sleeping janitor down a hallway, with flickering lights, and the key is hidden in a locked filing cabinet in a disused lavatory, with a sign on the door that says "Beware of the leopard, roaches check in." But they don't check out. This isn't hyperbole, it's a documented design philosophy. The asymmetry is the entire point. They make it easy to give them money and punishingly, exhaustingly difficult to stop. We've all run this gauntlet. First, you have to find the cancel subscription link, an act that requires the navigational skills of a seasoned archaeologist. It's never under my account or billing. No, it's hidden under a vague subheading like plan details or communication preferences. It will be rendered in the smallest possible font size, in a light gray color that is technically visible to the human eye but practically invisible, against a white background. Once you click it, the real fun begins. You are immediately presented with a mandatory survey asking why you're leaving, with no "I just don't want it anymore" option. Then comes the guilt trip, a classic dark pattern called confirm shimming. A big, sad face cartoon will appear with text like, "Are you sure you want to give up all your benefits?" Followed by two buttons, a bright, friendly one that says "Keep my benefits," and a tiny, shameful link that says, "No, I want to cancel." If you withstand the emotional manipulation, you are then presented with a better offer. "Don't go. We'll give you 50% off for the next 3 months, a tempting offer designed to make you postpone the decision, knowing full well you'll forget to cancel again in 3 months. If you decline that, you are often forced to re-enter your password for security reasons, a completely unnecessary step, designed as one last friction point to make you give up. The final, most infuriating tactic is the call to cancel. You can sign up with a single click in 3 seconds, but to cancel you must call an 800 number, navigate a phone tree from hell, and then spend 20 minutes on the phone with a retention specialist, whose entire job is to argue with you and wear you down until you just hang up in despair. Cause in the subscription economy, reducing customer churn became the most critical metric for demonstrating a company has financial stability and growth potential to investors. Gives effect, companies began investing heavily in retention strategies, which led to the widespread adoption and normalization of dark patterns. UX designers were incentivized not to create the best user experience, but the stickiest one, an experience that was intentionally difficult to exit. Gives consequence. This transformed the user interface from a helpful guide into an adversarial battleground. Trust between consumers and companies was systematically eroded, as users realized the platform was actively designed to work against their own stated intentions, turning the simple act of canceling a service into a frustrating and time-consuming ordeal. The meta-commentary is a tragedy for an entire profession. User experience UX design was supposed to be a noble calling. Its practitioners were meant to be the advocates for the user inside the corporation, fighting to make technology more humane, intuitive, and accessible. Dark patterns represent a complete moral inversion of that mission. It is the equivalent of hiring an architect to design a building with confusing exit signs to keep people inside longer. It's taking a discipline created to empower users and weaponizing it to exploit their cognitive biases, their limited patience, and their natural desire to avoid confrontation. And the most popular, most effective gateway into this roach motel, the piece of cheese that lures us into the trap. It's two of the most seductive words in the English language. And what are those to seductive words, that irresistible piece of cheese? Placed so carefully at the entrance of the Roach Motel, free trial. Ah yes, the two most beautiful and treacherous words. In the modern capitalist lexicon, they are whispered to us from every corner of the internet. A siren song for the commitment-phobic consumer. It's the digital equivalent of a friendly, well-dressed drug dealer leaning against a lamppost, offering you the first hit for free. Go on, he says with a reassuring smile. Try it. See if you like it. No pressure. The first one's on the house. He knows, with the cold, statistical certainty of a seasoned actuary, that a significant percentage of you will be back, and next time, you'll be paying. The free trial is presented as the ultimate consumer-friendly gesture. It's a testament, we are told, to the company's confidence in its own product. We are so sure you'll love our artisanal, AI-powered cat photo sorting service that we're willing to let you use it in all its glory. For a full 30 days, completely free of charge. It feels like a test drive. A risk-free opportunity to kick the digital tires before you make a decision. There's just one tiny, insignificant little catch. One small piece of administrative housekeeping before you can access all this free, wonderful stuff. We're just going to need your credit card number, for our records, to verify your account. To ensure a seamless transition if you choose to continue. This is the entire scam. It's a beautiful, elegant, and devastatingly effective lie. The request for your credit card upfront is not a minor detail. It is the load-bearing wall of the entire business model. The moment you hand over those 16 digits, you have fundamentally altered the dynamic. The default outcome has been flipped. Without a credit card, the default is that your trial ends and you go on your merry way. With a credit card on file, the default is that your trial ends and you become a paying customer. The burden of action has been shifted entirely onto you. The company no longer has to convince you to buy. It only has to hope that you forget to say no. And they are not hoping, they are betting. The entire free trial economy is a massive, multi-billion-dollar wager placed on the inherent fallibility of human memory. They are betting that your life is busy, that you'll get distracted, that you'll write a post-it note to cancel the cat photo thing and then the dog will eat it, that you'll set a calendar reminder but dismiss it because you're in a meeting. They are leveraging a universal human weakness, our collective inability to remember to do a minor, boring administrative task on a specific future date, and they have turned it into a profit center. Companies needed a low-friction method to convert curious non-customers into paying subscribers. Bypassing the sticker shock of an immediate purchase gives effect. They implemented the credit card-required free trial, which automatically enrolls the user into a paid plan after the trial period unless they proactively take steps to cancel. Gives consequence. This created a business model where a substantial portion of revenue, known in the industry as breakage, is derived from customers who forgot to cancel. Profitability became directly linked not just to user satisfaction, but to user inertia and forgetfulness, incentivizing companies to make the cancellation process as opaque and difficult as possible. The meta commentary is a monument to cynicism. This isn't a try before you buy system. It's a sign up and pray you remember to opt out system. It's an elaborate game of financial chicken, and your wallet is driving straight towards a cliff unless you swerve at the last possible second. The corporation isn't your friend, offering you a generous sample. It's a casino that has handed you a stack of free chips, knowing that the longer you stay at the table, the more likely it is you'll walk away with empty pockets. The very language is deceptive. It's not a trial. A trial implies you are the one doing the testing. In reality, they are testing you, your memory, your organizational skills, your tolerance for small, unwanted charges on your credit card statement. A snapshot to make you check your bank account right now. A 2020 survey found that over 42% of Americans have continued to pay for a subscription they forgot they had. We are collectively lighting billions of dollars on fire every year, not for services we want, but for services we simply failed to cancel. The trap is sprung the moment you enter your Visa number. The clock starts ticking down, not to the end of your evaluation period, but to the beginning of your unintended payment plan. Then, one day, weeks later, an email arrives. Not a warning that your trial is about to end. Oh no, that would be helpful, and helpful is not the goal. The email arrives after the fact. Welcome to the Pro Plan. Your card has been successfully charged $14.99. And at that moment, you realize the friendly drug dealer from the street corner is now your landlord, and the rent is due every month, forever. The Roach Motel has claimed another soul. Now comes the next phase of the ordeal, trying to get your money back. The email has landed, the charge has been made, The free trial trap has snapped shut on your ankle, and the initial shock is now curdling into a potent cocktail of righteous fury and self-loathing. You march to your laptop, a warrior on a quest for justice. The mission is simple: get a refund. This is a reasonable request. An honest mistake was made, or rather, an honest mistake was induced, and you, the customer, wish to rectify it. You are still operating under the quaint 20th century assumption that a company, when presented with a legitimate grievance, will have a human being on staff to address it. How sweet, how naive. You navigate to the website, your clicks filled with purpose. You ignore the glossy marketing copy and the smiling stock photos. You are looking for the digital embassy, the consulate of commerce, the contact us or help link. You find it. Tucked away in the footer, naturally, a click, a new page loads, and there, in the bottom right corner of your screen, a small window fades into view with a cheerful bloop. It has a friendly, generic name like Ava or Sparky or Zenbot, and a little cartoon robot avatar that looks suspiciously happy to see you. Hi there, it chirps. I'm the digital assistant. How can I help you today? And this is it. This is the first line of defense. You have not reached the company. You have reached its moat, and the moat is filled with artificially unintelligent crocodiles. Your Herculean trial has begun. You type out your simple, clear, human request. I was just charged for a subscription after a free trial I forgot to cancel. I would like a refund. You hit enter. The bot's little typing animation bubbles for a moment, a piece of pure theater designed to simulate thought, and then it responds with blinding speed and zero comprehension. I see you have a question about your subscription. Here are some helpful articles from our knowledge base. How to upgrade to our premium plan. Exploring the benefits of your subscription. How to manage your billing information. It is the equivalent of telling a firefighter your house is burning down and having them hand you a brochure for a new oven. You take a deep breath. Technology can be clumsy. You'll rephrase. That is not what I asked. I want to cancel my service and get my money back for the recent charge. The bot bubbles again. I can definitely help with canceling your service. To begin the cancellation process, please visit your account settings page. Is there anything else I can help you with today? Notice the sleight of hand. It has completely, surgically ignored the second half of your request. The get my money back part. It has deflected you, the angry customer, into the Roach Motel's pre-built cancellation labyrinth, the very same one you were trying to bypass. The bot isn't designed to solve your problem. It's designed to solve the company's problem, and the company's problem is you, asking for your money back. Now the rage begins to simmer. You resort to the magic words, the incantations you hope will summon a living soul from the digital ether. Agent, human, speak to a representative. The bot's programming anticipates this. It has a response ready. I'm sorry. I'm not sure I understand. I am an AI-powered assistant, and I can handle most common requests. To ensure I get you to the right place, could you please describe your issue in a few keywords? It is a master of weaponizing competence. A brick wall that has been taught to smile and apologize. Cause, human customer service agents are expensive, emotionally unpredictable, and most dangerously empowered to issue refunds, directly impacting the bottom line. Gives effect, companies replace them with legions of cheap, scalable, and rigidly controlled chatbots, whose primary programming directive shifted from problem resolution to cost containment. And deflection gives consequence. The customer support experience evolved from a potentially helpful conversation into an adversarial, automated gauntlet. The system is designed to frustrate, exhaust, and demoralize the user into either giving up on their refund or accepting a lesser non-cash offer like a service credit, thereby protecting corporate revenue at the direct expense of customer satisfaction. The meta commentary is a portrait of corporate nihilism. This isn't a flawed system. It is a perfectly tuned system achieving its intended, unstated goal to make asking for your money back so profoundly unpleasant that you conclude your time and sanity are worth more than the $14.99 they just took from you. Customer service is now a misnomer. It should be called customer deterrence. It's a calculated bet that the cost of your incandescent rage, multiplied by the small number of people who actually have the superhuman endurance to break through the bot wall, is still less than the cost of employing enough humans to answer the phone. A snapshot of the insanity in 2023. Studies showed that nearly 70% of customers preferred talking to a human agent over a chatbot. Yet the implementation of bots in customer service was projected to grow by over 25% annually. The companies know we hate it. They just don't care. Because it's cheaper. After 20 minutes of this circular, soul-crushing digital tight, You finally slam your laptop shut in defeat. The bot has won. And as you stare at your credit card statement, you start to notice another charge, and another, and another. The battle with the bot wasn't an isolated incident. It was just one skirmish in a much larger war. The chatbot has won. Your quest for a $14.99 refund has ended in a soul-crushing defeat. You close the laptop, but the sting of the charge remains. It's a tiny digital splinter lodged under your financial fingernail. Annoyed, you pull up your online banking statement, intending to glare at the single offending line item. But as the page loads, your eyes drift. You scroll, and the single splinter becomes a spike, then a field of spikes. The one charge isn't alone. It has friends. Lots of them. It's a whole damn party in your recurring payment section, and you weren't even invited. This is the moment of awakening. The financial red pill. You see it clear as day. There's the Netflix charge. Okay, fine, you use that. Next to it, Disney Plus and Max. And Peacock, which you only got to watch one season of one show 6 months ago. Then comes Spotify, the silent soundtrack to your life. Fair enough. But what's this? That meditation app you used twice and then forgot existed? $9.99 a month. The language learning app that was supposed to make you fluent in Italian before your non-existent trip to Rome. $12.99. The premium weather app that promises hyper-local forecasts, $4.99. The cloud storage you're only using 10% of, $11.99. The Adobe subscription. The Microsoft 365 subscription. That weird AI-powered writing assistant you tried once. The Razor delivery service. The meal kit. You keep forgetting to pause. It's not a list of expenses. It's a rap sheet. It's a testament to 1,000 optimistic moments and 1,000,000 forgotten intentions. Each line item, on its own, seems so small, so reasonable. A rounding error. The cost of a sandwich. But together, they are a monster. You, in your quest for convenience and control, have accidentally assembled a beast. The 10 subscription Hydra has awakened, and it lives in your bank account. Each subscription is a snarling, ravenous head, and every month, on a different day, each one takes its bite. There's no single, dramatic attack, just a constant, slow, methodical exsanguination. A death by 1,000 digital cuts. This is the hidden genius of the subscription economy. It's a masterwork of psychological warfare waged against our own financial common sense. Our brains are not wired to track dozens of tiny, automated, recurring payments. We're built to react to large, one-time costs. Dropping $1,000 to $100 on a piece of software feels significant. It prompts deliberation, a cost-benefit analysis, but being charged $100 a month, spread across 10 different services, it barely registers. It's a financial anesthetic. It slips past our defenses. A silent drain that we never fully appreciate until we force ourselves to sit down and do the horrifying, soul-destroying math. We were sold a story of freedom. Cut the cord, unbundle the software. You're in control now. You're the savvy consumer, picking and choosing only the services you want. The reality is the precise opposite. We traded one master for a dozen petty tyrants, each demanding its own fealty, its own line item on our budget. We don't have more control. We have more administrative overhead. Our life is now a complex portfolio of digital micro-leases that we are failing to manage. Cause the business world's mass pivot to the subscription model fragmented large, infrequent purchases into a continuous stream of small, automated, monthly payments from a multitude of vendors. Gives effect. This created a state of subscription fatigue and financial invisibility. Consumers, unable to easily track the cumulative total of these painless charges, lost a clear picture of how much they were actually spending on digital services. Gives consequence. A significant and often unnoticed portion of household income was silently siphoned off by a subscription stack of often underutilized or entirely forgotten services, transforming the promise of consumer empowerment into a complex financial burden and a new form of digital mental clutter. The meta commentary here is that the system is working exactly as designed. It is not a bug that you forget to cancel. It is the central feature. The Hydra thrives on our inattention. It feasts on our busy schedules and our limited cognitive bandwidth. The entire economic model is predicated on the idea that managing our lives is already so overwhelming that we won't notice or won't have the energy to fight the extra $100 or $200 bleeding out of our accounts every month. A snapshot of the beast's appetite. A 2023 study by CR Research found that consumers on average guess they spend about $86 per month on subscriptions. when the actual average is a staggering $119. We are underestimating the Hydra's bite by more than double. That's over $2,600 a year, vanishing into the ether of our own neglect. So now you're aware, your eyes are open, you see the beast you've created. The first instinct is to start cutting heads. You log into your Peacock account, ready to slay that particular serpent. You finally find the cancel button, but then you pause. Wait, season 2 of that show is coming, out next month. Maybe I'll just keep it for a little longer. You move on to the next one. The meditation app. You should really meditate more. You'll start tomorrow. You keep it. This is the Hydra's second trick. It doesn't just rely on your forgetfulness. It relies on your aspirational self. It sells you the person you wish you were, the person who is fluent in Italian, who meditates daily, who is always creatively productive, and canceling the subscription feels like admitting defeat. It feels like giving up on a better version of yourself, so you pay the monthly fee as a tax on your own guilt. And while you're agonizing over which head to chop, you start to notice something even more infuriating. The heads you're not chopping, the ones you actually use and like, they're starting to look a little sickly. So you're staring at the 10 subscription Hydra, paralyzed by a mixture of financial dread and aspirational guilt. You can't bring yourself to chop off the heads representing the better, more organized, Italian-speaking version of yourself. You decide, for a moment, to focus on the heads you actually like, the services you genuinely use, the Netflix, the Spotify. These are the good expenses, you tell yourself. The core of the new, liberated, a la carte media life you built. But as you look closer at these favored heads of the beast, you notice something deeply unsettling. They look unwell, a little mangy. They're getting thinner, and yet somehow, they seem to be demanding more food. This is the next stage of the great swindle. It's not just that you're paying for things you don't use. It's that the things you do use and love are actively getting worse, right before your very eyes. And you're paying more for the privilege of watching them decay. Welcome, my friends, to the age of digital shrinkflation. Shrinkflation is a term we usually associate with the grocery store. It is when you buy a bag of chips and notice it has suddenly 20% air, or your favorite chocolate bar has mysteriously lost a few squares even though the price on the shelf is exactly the same. You're paying the same, but getting less. In the digital world, it's 1,000 times more insidious. It's your favorite streaming service, which just hiked its price by $2, simultaneously losing 2 of your favorite shows and introducing a brand new, cheaper tier with ads. Let's talk about the patient zero of this plague, Netflix, the original liberator, the company that built its empire on a simple, sacred promise, a vast library, on demand, with no commercials. Ever. That was the deal. That was the revolution. For years, they held that line. They were the premium sanctuary. But a funny thing happens when you're a publicly traded company. You must grow forever when you've already signed up every man, woman, child, and moderately intelligent house cat with an internet connection. You can't grow by getting more subscribers. So, you have to find a way to get more money from the subscribers you already have. The knives come out, the sacred promises going the wood chipper. First, the library started to shrink. As we saw with the great unbundling, all the other media giants came home and took their toys with them. The vast, all-encompassing library that was Netflix's key selling point started to look patchy, like a beautiful lawn with a severe case of mange. Then came the price hikes. Slow, at first. $1 here, $2 there. Each one accompanied by a chipper email explaining that this was necessary to bring you more of the great content you love. It was a classic frog in boiling water strategy. But the real betrayal, the moment the mask truly came off, was the glorious, hypocritical one, the punch of killing password sharing and introducing ads. For years, Netflix's own Twitter account had cheerfully proclaimed, "Love is sharing a password." It was part of their brand identity. They were the cool, laid-back friend, not the greedy corporation. Then, almost overnight, the cool friend became a suspicious landlord, demanding to know who was sleeping on the couch and insisting they start paying rent. Cause streaming services like Netflix reached market saturation, making it impossible to continue their exponential subscriber growth. Yet they remained under immense pressure from Wall Street to perpetually increase revenue. Gives effect, they abandoned their growth-focused, consumer-friendly policies. They implemented aggressive monetization tactics aimed at their existing user base, including significant price increases, a crackdown on password sharing, and most critically, the launch of cheaper, ad-supported subscription tiers. Gives consequence, this shattered the core value proposition. that had attracted millions of users in the first place. The premium ad-free sanctuary was revealed to be a temporary customer acquisition strategy, not a permanent philosophy, forcing users to choose between paying significantly more for the original experience or accepting a degraded ad-interrupted service that looked suspiciously like the old cable model. They had fled. The meta commentary is a lesson in corporate gaslighting. We were sold a permanent escape, but we were only ever renting it. The entire ad-free promise was a bait-and-switch operation on a global scale. They used the allure of a commercial-free utopia to hook us, to make their service an indispensable part of our lives. Once we were addicted, once the habit was formed, they started to slowly, methodically dismantle the utopia and rebuild the very same ad-riddled prison we had just escaped from. They created the disease cable, sold us the cure ad-free streaming, and are now reinfecting us with the disease while charging us for the privilege. It is a business model of breathtaking cynicism, a snapshot that captures the sheer audacity. In late 2022, Netflix rolled out its basic with ads plan for $6.99. At the same time, its standard, ad-free plan cost $15.49. The message was clear: your attention, your uninterrupted focus, is worth $8.50 a month to us. Your sanity is now a premium add-on, and this model became the industry standard almost instantly. Disney Plus, Max, Paramount Plus, they all followed suit. The subscription hydra's heads weren't just getting thinner and demanding more food. They were starting to spew commercials all over us, just like the old beast we thought we had slain. The original promise was dead. The subscription wasn't a noble alternative to the ad model anymore. It was just a different door into the same slaughterhouse. And inside that slaughterhouse, they weren't just taking our money and our attention. They were taking something far more valuable. You're kneeling amidst the carnage of your former entertainment budget, surrounded by the thinning, ad-spewing heads of the subscription hydra. The services you pay for are objectively getting worse and more expensive. A deep, primal sense of being scammed is settling in your bones, but in the back of your mind, a tiny, hopeful voice whispers a justification. It's the last line of defense for this whole rotten system. Okay, the voice says, trying to sound reasonable. Fine. It's getting pricey, and the ads are back. It's annoying. But at least I'm a paying customer now. I'm not the product anymore. At least they're not spying on me, right? My data is safe. I paid for the privacy. Oh, you sweet, beautiful, hopelessly deluded summer child. That is the single greatest lie of the entire subscription economy. The idea that paying a monthly fee magically erects a privacy shield around your digital life is a fantasy. A comforting bedtime story corporations tell you while they're picking your pocket in the dark. You didn't pay to escape the surveillance economy. You just bought a premium ticket to a more intimate, more detailed, and ultimately more profitable version of it. Data isn't just the new oil. It's the invisible ink in every subscription contract you've ever signed. Here's the brutal truth. In the old free internet, they tracked an anonymous ghost. They followed user 78B4, a disembodied string of letters and numbers, across the web, trying to piece together a vague sketch of who you might be. It was creepy, but it was indirect. In the subscription world, they know exactly who you are. They have your name, they have your email address, they have your billing address, they have your credit card number. You are not an anonymous data point anymore. You are a named, verified, paying customer. And the data they collect on you now is not just your browsing history. It's your behavioral history within their own walled garden. And that data is pure, uncut, 24-karat gold. Your streaming service doesn't just know that you watched a movie. It knows you watched the first 20 minutes of 5 different romantic comedies before settling on a grim documentary about serial killers. It knows you paused it at the 47-minute mark. It knows you rewound that one scene 3 times. It knows you binge-watched an entire season of a reality show in one sitting on a Tuesday night. It is building a psychographic profile of you that is so terrifyingly accurate. It makes the old cookie-based tracking look like a child's crayon drawing. Your music streaming service knows you listen to upbeat pop on your morning commute, melancholic indie rock in the afternoon, and German industrial metal at 3 a.m. It can chart your moods with more accuracy than a therapist. And what do they do with this treasure trove of intimate, personal data? The same thing everyone else does. They sell it, or to use the polite corporate euphemism, they share it with trusted third-party partners for marketing and analytics purposes. They package your digital ghost no longer anonymous, but a fully realized, high-definition specter of your habits and desires, and they sell it to data brokers, to advertisers, to hedge funds, to anyone who will pay. Cause Subscription companies, having exhausted subscriber growth and price hikes, sought new, untapped revenue streams to satisfy the market's demand for perpetual growth. Gives effect, they realized the massive, detailed datasets of their paying users' behaviors were an enormously valuable asset that could be monetized, creating a powerful incentive to track and analyze every click, view, pause, and listen. Gives consequence, this obliterated the last remaining distinction between subscription and free services. Companies began to double dip, charging users a recurring fee for access to a service while also harvesting and selling their personal data, turning the premium sanctuary into a high-end surveillance operation. The customer was now both the paying client and the product being sold. The meta commentary is a scream of pure betrayal. We were explicitly told this was the alternative. We were sold a product whose entire marketing premise was that it was not the other thing. It turns out it's just the other thing in a nicer suit, charging a cover fee at the door. We aren't paying for a service, we're paying for the privilege of being surveilled more efficiently. We're paying to make it easier for them to build a better, more accurate profile of us to sell to someone else. It is like buying a home security system and then discovering the security company is selling blueprints of your house, along with a schedule of when you're not home, to a catalog of local burglars. Here's your snapshot into the abyss. Go read the privacy policy for a popular smart TV platform like Roku. You'll find language that gives them the right to collect data from what you watch and what you search for, including your use of voice search, and to share that data with advertisers to make the ads you see more relevant to you. You paid for the TV. You pay for the streaming apps on the TV, and the TV itself is watching you, taking notes, and selling them. The subscription didn't get you out of the game. It just made you a more valuable player on a field you didn't even know you were on. This toxic business model, this glorious paradox of paying for the privilege of being exploited, was about to leak out of our screens and into the real world. The infection wasn't content to stay behind the screen. This parasitic business philosophy charged people for a service, then also sell their data, then also degrade the service to sell them a premium version of the original promise. Was too profitable, too brilliantly cynical to be contained to the digital world of movies and software. It was time for it to break quarantine. It was time for it to come for the real world, for your dinner, for your ride home from the bar. The subscription hydra was about to grow physical, tangible heads, and it started with the darlings of the so-called gig economy. Remember the initial, breathtaking magic of companies like Uber and DoorDash. It was a revolution in convenience. You tapped a button on your phone, and a car appeared. You tapped another button, and a hot meal from your favorite restaurant arrived at your door. It was the future, delivered in 30 minutes or less, and the payment model was the epitome of beautiful simplicity. You paid for what you used, when you used it. It was purely transactional. You needed a ride, you paid the fare. You wanted tacos, you paid for the tacos and a delivery fee. It was the antithesis of the subscription model. No commitment, no recurring charges, no lock-in. It was freedom. It was on demand. And of course, it couldn't last. Because while on demand is great for customers, it's terrifying for chief financial officers. Transactional revenue is spiky, it's unpredictable, it goes up and down with the weather, with holidays, with the day of the week, and Wall Street, our insatiable god of financial markets, hates unpredictability. It craves the smooth, steady, ever-climbing line of monthly recurring revenue. So, the gig economy giants, hemorrhaging cash in a desperate bid for market dominance, and facing immense pressure to show a path to profitability, all looked at each other and had the same terrible idea. They looked at the subscription hydra, and they said, we need some of that. Enter DashPass, enter Uber One, enter Grubhub Plus, a new wave of subscriptions. Not for a digital product, but for access to a better version of reality. The pitch was, as always, seductive. Pay us $9.99 a month, they cooed. And you'll get unlimited free deliveries, no service fees, exclusive discounts, priority service. It sounded like a fantastic deal, especially if you were a frequent user. You're basically prepaying for a VIP experience. You're not a gig economy gigolo anymore. You're a member of the club. Except the club is a scam. And the VIP room is just a normal room with a rope in front of it that they just put up. Let's dismantle the benefits. Free delivery. It's not free. You literally just paid $9.99 for it. It's an all-you-can-eat buffet that you pay to cover charge to enter. More insidiously, countless studies have shown that menu prices on these apps are often artificially inflated by the restaurants themselves to offset the massive commission the platforms take. So you're paying a monthly fee to get free delivery on a burrito. That already costs 20% more than it would if you just walked in and bought it. But the real, soul-crushing lie is priority service. This is the key. This is where the model reveals its true, extortionate nature. Cause gig economy platforms like Uber and DoorDash, built on a transactional model, face relentless pressure from investors to generate predictable, recurring revenue and demonstrate profitability. Gives effect, they introduced premium subscription tiers, e.g., Uber One, DashPass, that offered perks like waived fees and, crucially, priority service, which placed subscribers at the front of the line for drivers and couriers. Gives consequence, this intentionally created a two-tiered system of service. The baseline experience for non-subscribers was implicitly and systematically degraded longer waits, colder food in order to create a problem that the subscription could then be sold as the solution. 2. You weren't paying for a better service. You were paying protection money to avoid a deliberately worse one. The meta commentary is that this is a digital protection racket. They walk into your neighborhood, your phone, break the windows on your favorite restaurant by making delivery slow and expensive, and then they walk up to you and say, "Nice place you got here. Shame if something were to happen to it. For a low monthly fee, we can make sure your food arrives intact." They are creating the very friction they are charging you to remove. The normal service everyone used to get "we will try to get your ride, food to you, as efficiently as possible" is now a premium. Members only benefit, the rest of you, the non-subscribers. You're the peasants, you get the leftovers, you get the driver who is 3 miles further away. You're the second or third stop on the delivery route. Here's your snapshot of the shakedown. A 2024 market analysis revealed that in major urban centers, the average wait time for a non-subscriber's rideshare during peak hours increased by up to 4 minutes in the year following the introduction of a major platform's priority subscription. The system isn't getting better for subscribers. It's getting actively worse for everyone else. Now, even the simple act of getting a pizza is another head on the Hydra. And just like its digital brethren, this new physical head of the beast was designed with the same core principle in mind. Easy to join and a nightmare to leave, the Roach Motel was about to get a physical address. So you've subscribed to the protection racket that gets your burrito delivered. While it's still lukewarm, another head on the Hydra, another recurring charge. And just like its purely digital cousins, this new subscription comes with the same breezy, reassuring promise. Right there in the sign-up confirmation email, in cheerful, friendly letters, no commitment. Cancel anytime. Ah, those beautiful, fraudulent words again, the official motto of the Roach Motel. Cancel anytime is supposed to be the contractual emergency exit. The ripcord on your financial parachute. It's the single most important piece of assurance that transforms a terrifying, lifelong commitment into a casual, low-stakes fling. It's also, in practice, the most brazen lie of the entire subscription economy. The quest to cancel any time is a modern-day epic poem of suffering. It is a hero's journey that no one asks to go on, a descent into a user interface hell designed by sadists and lawyers. The entire experience is a masterclass in psychological warfare, engineered with one goal, to make you give up. It's not a process, it's an ordeal, a test of your will. Let's walk the path. The journey begins in hope. You log into your account. You're a reasonable person. You assume there will be a large, friendly, red button that says cancel subscription. You are immediately proven to be a fool. The button does not exist. The first trial is the trial of navigation. The cancellation link has been hidden with the skill of a CIA operative hiding sensitive documents. It is not under billing. It is not under account. It is not under subscription. It's buried 3 levels deep under a sub-menu labeled data portability options or something equally nonsensical. The link itself will be the color of dust. A pale gray hashtag CCCCCC on a slightly less pale gray hashtag F to F to F to background. A whisper of text so faint it's more of a rumor than a hyperlink. Should you, through some miracle of eyesight and perseverance, find and click this link, you advance to the second trial, the interrogation. A mandatory exit survey appears. We're sad to see you go. Please tell us why you're leaving. This is not a genuine request for feedback. This is a delaying tactic and a data-gathering operation on a fleeing subject. The multiple choice options are a masterwork of passive aggression. It's too expensive, so you're cheap. I'm not using it enough, so you're lazy. I found a better alternative, so you're a traitor. There is never an option for because your company is a morally bankrupt leech and I want my money back. You click an answer at random just to proceed. This brings you to the third trial, the haggle. A pop-up explodes onto your screen. Wait, don't go. It screams, often accompanied by a picture of a crying cartoon animal. We don't want to lose you. As a valued customer, we'd like to offer you an exclusive 75% discount for the next 6 months. This is not generosity. This is a bet on your inertia. They know that if they can get you to just postpone the cancellation, the odds are overwhelmingly high that you will forget to do it again in 6 months, at which point the price will quietly triple. It's a trap disguised as a favor if you have the iron will to refuse this tempting offer. You face the fourth and most emotionally manipulative trial, the confirmation. This is the final psychological assault. The page reloads, at the top, in huge, bold letters. Are you sure you want to lose all your priors, benefits, rewards, access to 500 terabytes of cat videos? Below this are the buttons. The first is massive, glowing, and green. It says nitrogen monoxide. Keep my awesome benefits. The second option, the one you actually want, is a tiny, unadorned text link at the bottom of the page. It says, I understand that I am a fool and wish to proceed with the cancellation. Clicking it feels like you're disappointing your parents. Cause, the financial model of subscriptions is entirely dependent on retaining customers. To maintain predictable recurring revenue, making every cancellation a direct financial loss. Gives effect, companies are incentivized to create an intentionally high-friction cancellation process. They weaponize UI, UX design, and psychology to introduce as many obstacles, delays, and emotional appeals as possible between a user's intent to cancel and the actual cancellation. Gives consequence. The marketing promise of cancel anytime becomes a functional lie. It's transformed from a simple, one-click action into a prolonged, multi-step ordeal that requires significant time, effort, and emotional resilience, effectively trapping customers who lack the resources or energy to complete the gauntlet. The meta commentary is that this whole charade is an act of profound corporate disrespect. It's a company looking you, the paying customer, dead in the eye and saying, we do not trust our own product to be valuable enough to keep you here willingly. Therefore, we will hold you captive. It is the business equivalent of a relationship where one person has hidden the other's car keys to prevent them from leaving after a fight. It's not a healthy partnership, it's a hostage situation. And if all these digital trials fail to break your spirit, then they unleash the final boss, forcing you to talk to a human. The dreaded call to cancel, the ultimate escalation in user hostility. And as this war of attrition raged on, a new technology was quietly being perfected in the background. A technology that would make these traps not just difficult, but intelligent. You're on the phone, you've done it, you've bypassed the chatbots, navigated the labyrinthine website, withstood the emotional blackmail of the confirmation pop-ups, and you've finally reached the final boss, the human retention specialist. You brace yourself for a 20-minute argument, a verbal chess match against a highly trained professional whose entire job is to wear you down. You are prepared for battle, but you are fighting yesterday's war. While you were busy learning how to counter the arguments of a human, the corporations were busy building a god. A quiet, invisible, all-knowing god of commerce. And its name is artificial intelligence. We have a very sanitized, consumer-facing idea of what AI is. We think of Siri telling us a joke, or Alexa setting a timer. We think of Netflix's recommendation engine, that friendly algorithm that suggests another true crime documentary, because it knows we have a morbid curiosity. That's the AI they want you to see. It's the smiling, helpful animatronic character at the front of the theme park. The real AI, the one that runs the entire park, lives in the basement. It's not friendly. It doesn't tell jokes. And its only job is to make sure that once you're in the park, you spend as much money as possible and never, ever find the exit. This new, supercharged AI wasn't just being used to recommend movies, it was being used to play you. It took all that data we talked about, every click, every pause, every search, every abandoned shopping cart, every previous subscription, and it fed it into a machine learning model. The model's goal was not to understand you as a person, it was to understand you as a wallet with predictable weaknesses and exploitable behaviors. The key applications of this technology were about to turn the subscription trap from a static, dumb labyrinth into a sentient, adaptive prison that reconfigured its walls in real time. First, dynamic pricing. The idea is simple and terrifying. The price of a product or service is no longer a fixed number. It is a fluid, personalized variable, calculated for you and you alone. In the instant you load the page, the AI looks at your data profile. Does your browsing history suggest you have a high income? The price goes up. Have you visited this product page 5 times in the last day? That signals desperation. The price goes up. Are you shopping from an expensive laptop on a fancy Wi-Fi network? Price goes up. The person sitting next to you on their older phone could be seeing a completely different price for the exact same flight, hotel room, or even digital service. It's the end of the concept of a fair market price. The price is now whatever the algorithm calculates you are most likely to tolerate paying. Second, and even more sinister, is predictive churn analysis. The AI doesn't wait for you to try and cancel. It is constantly running the numbers, calculating the exact probability that you, specifically you, are going to churn in the next 30 days. It sees you haven't logged in for 2 weeks. It sees your usage dropping. The algorithm flags you as a high-risk customer. So before you even think about canceling, the system takes action. It might automatically email you a special, one-time 25% discount. It might add a new, popular movie to the streaming service and then push a notification to your phone, re-engaging you before you can stray. When you finally do go to cancel, the system already knows everything about you. The human agent on the phone has a screen in front of them with a score. Your churn risk score, your price sensitivity score. The AI has already calculated the exact, bespoke, custom-tailored offer that has the highest probability of making you stay. You think you're having a conversation. You're actually just the final step in a ruthlessly efficient mathematical equation. Companies leveraged AI and machine learning to analyze their massive user datasets, moving beyond simple analytics to create powerful predictive models for individual customer behavior. Gives effect, this enabled the widespread implementation of hyper-personalized manipulation tactics, such as dynamic pricing that adjusts based on a user's perceived wealth and desperation, and proactive retention offers precision targeted at users whom the AI has flagged as likely to cancel. Gives consequence, the power asymmetry between consumer and corporation became a chasm. The user is no longer just navigating a cleverly designed website. They are engaged in a real-time, one-sided negotiation against a supercomputer that knows their habits and psychological triggers better than they do, and whose goal is not to serve them, but to extract the maximum possible value from them. The meta commentary is that this is the final, terrifying evolution of the Roach Motel. It's not just a building with tricky exits anymore, it's a building that reads your mind. It knows which hallway you're going to turn down and puts a wall there. It knows you're thirsty and offers you a single, overpriced bottle of water. It knows you're about to break a window and preemptively reinforces it with steel. We are unarmed amateurs in a game against a grandmaster that can see every possible move we could ever make. And this terrifying, invisible intelligence, this silent puppeteer pulling the strings of our digital lives, was operating almost completely in the dark, with no rules and no oversight, until, that is, a few governments, after a very long and profitable nap, finally started to wake up and notice that the entire internet had become a giant, unregulated casino. The digital world was a lawless frontier, a wild west where corporations were the gunslingers, and we, the consumers, were the unarmed townsfolk, constantly getting shaken down for our lunch money. The sheriffs, the governments, and regulatory bodies of the world were nowhere to be seen. For the better part of 2 decades, they were engaged in a deep, Rip Van Winkle-esque slumber, lulled to sleep by a powerful corporate lullaby. The lyrics were simple and repeated ad nauseam. Don't regulate us. We are innovating. This is progress. It's complicated. You wouldn't understand. Just let us build the future. And we promise everyone will get a free hoverboard. And the governments, mesmerized by the stock market valuations and terrified of being labeled anti-tech, bought it completely. They adopted a policy of blissful, determined ignorance. While the regulators slept, the subscription hydra grew, the Roach Motels were built, and the AI-powered casinos perfected their odds. Every single person with an internet connection was experiencing this escalating user hostility firsthand. We were all trapped in the same cancellation labyrinths, duped by the same free trial scams and manipulated by the same algorithms. The problem wasn't a secret, it was the central, defining, and universally loathed experience of being a modern consumer. Yet, from Washington, Brussels, and other world capitals, there was nothing but a profound and deafening silence. Then, slowly, creakily, the giant began to stir. The alarm clock wasn't a single event, but a cacophony of them. It was the Cambridge Analytica scandal, which finally made politicians realize that this data stuff wasn't just about selling shoes, but could be used to swing an election. It was the relentless drumbeat of investigative journalism, exposing the most egregious dark patterns and predatory practices. It was the sheer, overwhelming volume of consumer complaints, a trickle that became a flood, then a tsunami, finally crashing over the marble steps of government agencies. The sleeping giant cracked open an eye, yawned, stretched, and looked down at the digital landscape it had ignored for a generation. And it let out a collective, bureaucratic, "Wait a minute. Is that what you've been doing this whole time?" The awakening was comical in its tardiness. Regulators suddenly discovered a glaring, canyon-sized hypocrisy in their own laws. They realized that if a man in a trench coat stood on a street corner and offered you a free sample of a product, then followed you home and started taking money out of your wallet every month, he would be arrested. But if a company did the exact same thing through a website, it was lauded as a disruptive subscription business model, making it illegal to steal a physical wallet, but perfectly legal to trap someone in a digital subscription was, they belatedly concluded, a bit inconsistent. If a gym made you solve a riddle and then wrestle a bear to cancel your membership, its owners would be in jail. But a website could do the digital equivalent and call it optimizing the user journey to reduce churn. In the United States, the Federal Trade Commission (FTC), after years of playing whack-a-mole with individual scammers, started to aim its legal cannons at the entire system. They began to talk about dark patterns, giving an official name to the shadowy design arts we had all been subjected to. They issued policy statements declaring that the cancellation process must be as simple and as easy as the sign-up process. It was a concept so radical, so profoundly pro-consumer, it sent a chill down the collective spine of Silicon Valley, caused a convergence of major data scandals, sustained media exposure of predatory practices, and an insurmountable volume of public complaints finally forced regulators to abandon their hands-off approach to the tech industry. Gives effect, government agencies like the FTC began to publicly condemn dark patterns and initiated high-profile lawsuits against companies for using deceptive subscription models and intentionally complex cancellation processes. Reframing these common business practices as illegal gives consequence. This marked the end of the era of unregulated impunity. The threat of massive government fines and legally mandated changes became a real and present danger, forcing companies to shift resources from simply designing manipulative systems to building robust legal defenses for them. The risk was no longer just reputational. It was financial and existential. The meta commentary is a head-shaking exercise in disbelief. It took the most powerful institutions on Earth more than a decade to catch up to a problem that your grandmother could have explained to them in 5 minutes. After trying to cancel her online newspaper subscription, the sheer inertia of government, compared to the lightning speed of technological exploitation, was laid bare for all to see. They weren't heroes riding to the rescue. They were the building inspectors showing up after the skyscraper had already collapsed, clipboards in hand, ready to take some notes. But they were here now. The game had changed. The gunslingers could no longer operate with total freedom because a new sheriff was in town. An old, slow, and slightly confused sheriff, perhaps, but a sheriff nonetheless. And while the American sheriff was just starting to pin on its badge, a much stricter, much more organized, and far more aggressive lawman across the Atlantic was about to kick down the saloon doors. So, the American sheriff was finally awake, rubbing the sleep out of its eyes and muttering about maybe, possibly, forming a committee to look into all this digital thievery. It was a start. But across the Atlantic, the European constable wasn't forming a committee. It had already deputized the entire continent, built a brand new gallows in the center of town, and was nailing wanted posters to every server rack from Dublin to Dubrovnik. While America was threatening to write a strongly worded letter, Europe was loading a cannon, and in 2018, they fired it. The cannonball was called the General Data Protection Regulation, or GDPR. And it was the single biggest regulatory earthquake to hit the tech world since the invention of the microchip. The GDPR was not a suggestion, it was a doctrinal shift in the balance of power. For decades, the unwritten law of the internet was that corporations own your data. It was their asset, their oil, their property to drill, refine, and sell. The GDPR took that law, ripped it up, set it on fire, and scattered the ashes. It was a European declaration of digital independence, and its core principles were so profoundly, shockingly pro-human it felt like a transmission from an alternate dimension. First, the right to consent, and not the fake, buried in the terms of service consent we were used to. Real, explicit, unambiguous consent. You had to actively opt into being tracked, not just fail to opt out. Second, the right to access. You can now demand a company hand over every single scrap of data it had on you. Third, the right to be forgotten. You could tell a company to delete your data, and they had to do it. And to make sure the corporate gunslingers were paying attention, the GDPR came with a penalty phase that was designed to induce sheer, pants-wetting terror in every boardroom on the planet. Fines for non-compliance were up to 20 million euros, or 4% of a company's total global annual revenue, whichever was higher. Let's put that in perspective. For a company like Google, that's not a slap on the wrist. That's a multi-billion-dollar tactical nuke. The message was clear. The party is over. What followed was the great GDPR panic. The entire global internet had a simultaneous, collective freak out. Why? Because the internet doesn't respect borders. A small e-commerce site in Ohio that sells hand-wear-upon dog sweaters suddenly had a legal problem. What if someone from Germany buys one? Boom. You're now subject to GDPR. A blogger in Australia. A startup in Brazil. If a single citizen of the European Union could access your website, you were on the hook. Legions of lawyers were hired. Armies of consultants were deployed. A frantic global scramble to become GDPR compliant began, and at the heart of that scramble was one terrifying question. How do we get that explicit consent for all the cookies we've been using to spy on people for the last 20 years? The solution they landed on is perhaps the greatest monument to malicious compliance ever constructed. It is a masterpiece of legal ass covering and user-hostile design. It is the single most clicked, least read, and universally despised element of the modern web, the cookie consent banner. Cause, the GDPR mandated that websites obtain clear, affirmative user consent before placing any non-essential tracking cookies on their browser. Gives effect. Faced with this complex legal requirement, the vast majority of companies chose the fastest, cheapest, and laziest possible solution. They implemented a pop-up banner that blocked the content and demanded the user make a choice. Gives consequence. This didn't create a world of informed, empowered users. It created a world of consent fatigue. The banners, deliberately designed with a large, friendly accept all button and a confusing, multi-step manage settings option, trained billions of people to reflexively click accept just to get the damn box out of the way, thereby creating a meaningless click-through ritual that grants the very consent the law was trying to make meaningful. The meta commentary is a tragic farce. The GDPR was a sword forged to slay the dragon of surveillance capitalism, and the corporations took that sword, melted it down, and recast it as a billion identical, incredibly annoying pop-up windows. It was a brilliant act of corporate judo, using the regulation's own weight to defeat its purpose. The law said, you must give users a clear choice. And the company said, okay. The choices: press this big easy green button to accept everything or spend the next 20 minutes of your life in a sub-menu that looks like a nuclear submarine-esque control panel unchecking 300 different boxes for our trusted advertising partners. It's a fake choice. It's a coerced choice, and we all know it. The cookie banner is a lie we all agree to participate in 100 times a day. It is the digital equivalent of asking, do you accept the terms and conditions, while holding a gun to the user's head. It's a victory for the lawyers, a nightmare for the users, and a complete betrayal of the spirit of the law. The European hammer had fallen, but it hadn't shattered the system. It had just made it more annoying, but the ideas behind it, consent, simplicity, fairness, were now in the water. And another regulator, on the other side of the world, was about to take a much more specific shot. The GDPR was a nuke, and the cookie banner was the radioactive fallout of global, irritating haze that proved corporations were masters of turning any rule, no matter how well-intentioned, into a user experience nightmare. The European approach was broad, philosophical, and focused on the abstract concept of data. It was a sledgehammer aimed at a ghost. But while the EU was fighting a war of ideas, another government, much closer to the heart of the beast, was sharpening a stiletto. It wasn't interested in the grand philosophy of data ownership. It was interested in one simple, brutally practical question: where the hell is the cancel button? Enter California, the world's fifth largest economy, the land of sunshine, avocados, and the very server farms where the subscription hydra was born and raised. This wasn't the foreign power lobbying regulations over an ocean. This was the landlord showing up at the head office in Cupertino or Mountain View, holding a copy of the lease agreement and pointing to the fine print. And California, having watched its citizens get fleeced by 1,000 digital roach motels, decided to do something so simple, so profoundly common sense, that it was treated as a radical act of economic terrorism by the tech industry. The state had a series of laws on the books, most notably the Automatic Renewal Law ARL, which they decided to give some serious teeth. The core principle wasn't about data, or privacy, or algorithms. It was about symmetry, balance, Fairness. The concept was this: the effort required to get out of a commitment should be equal to the effort it took to get into it. It was a rule so basic, so kindergarten level obvious. It's a miracle it had to be written down. If you can sign up for a service entirely online with 2 clicks of a mouse, you must be able to cancel that service entirely online with 2 clicks of a mouse. That's it. That was the revolution. You can almost hear the panic in the boardrooms. Wait, you mean we have to let them go without forcing them to call a retention specialist in a different time zone? Without making them solve a CAPTCHA that asks them to identify a bus in a series of blurry photos of other buses? You mean the button has to be visible? Yes, that's exactly what it meant. No more hiding the link in the site's terms of service. No more forcing users to switch from the app to a desktop website. No more digital scavenger hunts. The law, especially after being strengthened in 2022, was a direct, surgical strike against the foundational business practice of the Roach Motel. This was California's shine the light moment, not just for data, but for the dark, cobweb-filled corridors of user-hostile design. The law demanded transparency and simplicity in the cancellation process, a concept so alien to the subscription economy that it might as well have been a decree written in Klingon. Cause, California legislators, armed with mountains of consumer complaints, strengthen their existing consumer protection laws to specifically and explicitly target the intentional friction and asymmetry of subscription cancellation processes. Gives effect, the law mandated a clear and conspicuous and easy-to-use online cancellation method for any subscription that was initiated online, legally requiring companies to dismantle the dark patterns they had spent millions to create. Gives consequence, this triggered a wave of forced redesigns across the internet as companies scrambled to avoid massive fines from the California Attorney General. The once mythical one-click cancel button began to appear on websites, not as an act of customer-centric goodwill, but as an act of legally mandated, deeply resentful compliance. The meta commentary is a glorious exercise in absurdity. We as a society had to pass a formal law to force multi-billion-dollar corporations to behave with the basic decency of a corner store that lets you return a carton of expired milk without a 20-minute interrogation. The fact that make the cancel button easy to find was a controversial, industry-shaking piece of legislation. Tells you everything you need to know about how fundamentally broken and anti-consumer the system had become. This wasn't the government stifling innovation. This was the government passing a do not actively deceive your customers bill. It was a baseline of ethical behavior, codified into law because the industry had proven, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that it was incapable of establishing one for itself. A snapshot of the legal dagger, the strengthened law explicitly stated that a consumer who signs up online must be able to terminate exclusively online, at will and without engaging in any further steps that obstruct or delay the consumer's ability to terminate. That phrase, "without engaging in any further steps," was the kill shot. It was a direct attack on the exit surveys, the haggle pop-ups, the confirm shimming, the entire psychological gauntlet. The Roach Motel, at least in its most blatant forms, was now officially illegal in the state of California. The Hydra had been wounded. A clear, legal precedent had been set. The balance of power was shifting. But a wounded beast is a dangerous one. The corporations, now facing a direct legal threat, weren't about to give up. They couldn't fight the law, but they could certainly mock its spirit. They would comply, but they would do so with the enthusiasm of a teenager cleaning their room. The age of open warfare was over. The age of theatrical compliance was about to begin. So the law had spoken. In the golden state of California, the Roach Motel was officially condemned. The government, in a rare moment of lucidity, had declared that the digital exit door must be as wide, as well-lit, and as easy to open as the front entrance. For a brief, glorious second, it felt like a turning point. A victory for the little guy. We imagined a new internet, a world of one-click cancellations and transparent policies, where companies treated us with a baseline of respect, not because they wanted to, but because they were legally required to. We were so naive. We fundamentally misunderstood the nature of the beast. We thought the problem was a set of bad behaviors that could be corrected with a few well-placed rules. The problem wasn't the behavior, it was the entire business model. The subscription hydra doesn't survive on customer delight, it survives on customer inertia, confusion, and despair. Forcing it to be user-friendly is like forcing a shark to become a vegetarian. It's a violation of its core identity. And so, the corporations did not have a moment of spiritual awakening. They did not gather their UX designers and say, let's finally do right by our customers. They gathered their lawyers and said, what is the absolute, bare minimum, cheapest, and most cynical way we can comply with the letter of this law so we don't get fined into oblivion, while simultaneously violating its spirit in every way imaginable? Welcome to the grand stage of Co-Parade Compliance Theater. The lights dim, the curtain rises, the first act is a sweeping, dramatic performance of radical transparency. You remember this, in the months following the GDPR's enactment, your inbox was hit by a tsunami. Dozens of emails, all with the same subject line, we've updated our privacy policy. It was presented as a great public service, a gesture of openness and honesty, but it was the exact opposite. It wasn't an act of simplification, it was an act of strategic obfuscation. They didn't fix their creepy, convoluted data harvesting practices. They just hired a team of high-priced lawyers to describe those creepy, convoluted practices in 20 pages of impenetrable legalese. Nobody read these documents. Nobody was ever meant to read them. That was the entire point. It's the hide-in-plain-sight defense. It is the equivalent of being accused of stealing a cookie and responding by handing the accuser the entire 10,000-page US tax code and saying, the answer is in there somewhere, good luck. The goal was not to inform you. The goal was to produce a document that their legal team could triumphantly wave in a courtroom, saying, see, Your Honor, we told them. Page 47, subsection 12, paragraph C, line 8. It's right there. It was a shield, not a window. Act 2 of our theatrical masterpiece was the celebration of user choice. This is where the checkbox play began. To comply with the demand for explicit consent, every form, every sign-up page, every login screen became infested with a thicket of tiny boxes. But these weren't simple yes, no questions. They were logic puzzles designed by a malevolent sphinx. You'd see things like, check this box to opt out of not receiving promotional emails. You had to read it 3 times, diagram the sentence, consult a philosopher, and you were still only 50% sure which choice would stop the spam. They pre-checked the boxes for sharing your data with trusted partners. They used confusing color schemes and layouts to trick your eye into clicking the one you didn't want. They were giving you a choice in the same way a magician gives you a choice when he says, pick a card, any card, knowing full well he's going to force the one he wants on you. Cause, faced with legally mandated requirements for transparency and user consent, companies opted for performative compliance rather than a fundamental change in their business practices. Gives effect, they implemented a strategy of malicious obedience, satisfying the letter of the law through user-hostile means, like incomprehensibly long privacy policies and confusing, pre-checked consent checkboxes. Gives consequence, this created a new form of user frustration, a compliance fatigue where the internet became cluttered with legally required, but practically useless obstacles. Instead of empowering users, this theatrical transparency simply trained them to ignore the new warnings and click accept on everything, rendering the regulations functionally meaningless in practice. The meta commentary is a testament to the sheer, unadulterated contempt these companies have for both their customers and the law. They see a regulation designed to protect people not as a moral guideline, but as an annoying level in a video game that they need to find the cheat code for. And the cheat code is always the same: make the compliant path so annoying, so time-consuming, and so mentally exhausting that the user will voluntarily choose the path of least resistance, which is always coincidentally the path that makes the company the most money. It's a victory of cynicism over sense. They followed the rules, but with a sneer and a wink. And as for California's beautiful law about the easy cancel button, oh, they complied. They put the button on the page. But they knew the law was just the beginning of the journey. The button was just the first door. And they still controlled all the hallways behind it. The journey to freedom was still a long, dark, and infuriating one. This entire cycle of a platform starting good, then getting worse, then getting regulated, then complying maliciously was becoming so common, so predictable, that it was about to get a name. This whole infuriating spectacle, the theatrical compliance, the malicious obedience, the army of lawyers hired to make things more confusing, it isn't just a series of unfortunate, isolated events. This isn't a few bad companies making a few bad decisions. You've been feeling it for years, haven't you? That slow, creeping, undeniable sensation that everything on the internet is getting worse, that your favorite apps are becoming less useful, that your social media feeds are turning into digital sludge, that the platforms you once loved now seem to actively hold you in contempt. It's not your imagination. This decay is real. It is a pattern. It is a predictable, observable, and brutally effective process. And in the great, Chaotic lexicon of the internet, a new word was recently forged to describe it. A word so crude, so blunt, so visually perfect that the moment you hear it, you realize it's the only word that will ever do. The word is enshittification. Finally, a word as ugly as the process it describes. Coined by the writer and activist Cory Doctorow. Enshittification is the formal name for the disease we've been diagnosing for the last 21 sections. It is the observable life cycle of nearly every digital platform, a three-act tragedy in which we, the users, are the perpetual victims. It explains everything. It connects the dots between the friendly free internet of yesteryear and the parasitic, rent-seeking hellscape we inhabit today. Act 1. The Golden Age. The platform is born, and it is wonderful to get you to come inside. They make the service as amazing as possible. They shower you with value. Google gives you clean, relevant search results. Facebook shows you what your actual friends are doing. Amazon sells you books for cheap and delivers them with shocking speed. During this first stage, the platform is good to its users. It runs at a loss, subsidized by billions in venture capital. All to achieve one goal: lock in. Get everyone on the platform. Make it so essential to their lives that leaving would be unthinkable. This is the honeymoon phase. The platform loves you. It needs you. You are the most important person in the world. Act 2. The pivot. The users are now trapped. Your friends are all on Facebook. You can't imagine shopping anywhere but Amazon. Your entire digital life runs through Google. The lock-in is complete. Now that you can't leave, the platform stops caring about you. Its focus shifts to its next target: the business customers, the advertisers, the marketplace sellers, the content creators. To make the platform attractive to them, the value that was once given to you is now taken away and given to businesses. Your Facebook feed is no longer filled with your friends' baby pictures. It's filled with ads and suggested content from brands. Your Amazon search for running shoes no longer shows you the best running shoes. It shows you for rows of sponsored garbage shoes from companies that paid to be there. The user experience is systematically, deliberately degraded to make room for the people who pay the bills. Act 3. The squeeze. Now, everyone is trapped. The users can't leave because of the network effect. The businesses can't leave because that's where the users are. The platform has achieved a true duopoly or monopoly, and now that everyone is a prisoner, the platform turns on its business customers and begins to squeeze them. The value is now extracted from everyone and funneled directly to the platform shareholders. Ad prices on Google and Facebook skyrocket. Amazon's fees for third-party sellers become crushingly high. The platform stops trying to serve anyone. It becomes a parasitic landlord, extracting rent from every interaction. While the quality of the service for both users and businesses plummets into the abyss, the platform has now completed its journey. It has become enshittified. Cause, digital platforms with strong network effects are incentivized by investors to prioritize hyper-growth over initial profitability, leading them to first attract and lock in users with a superior, often subsidized, service. Gives effect. Once market dominance is achieved, the platform's fiduciary duty shifts to monetization. It systematically degrades the user experience to sell access to that locked-in user base to business customers, and then subsequently squeezes those business customers with higher fees and worse terms. Gives consequence. This creates a predictable and seemingly inevitable decay cycle where platforms transition from being valuable ecosystems to parasitic, rent-seeking monopolies. The service becomes a frustrating, low-quality and shittified version of its former self, hostile to everyone it serves but maximally profitable for its owners. The meta commentary is the devastating realization that this isn't an accident. The subscription hydra, the dark patterns, the return of ads, they aren't signs that the system is broken. They are signs that the system is working exactly as intended. The enshittification cycle is the business plan. The initial, beautiful, user-friendly version of the service wasn't a promise, it was bait. We weren't the customers, we were the resource being colonized. This single, profane word gives us a framework to understand that the slow, painful death of our favorite platforms is not a mystery. It is a murder, and we are the witnesses, the victims, and in a way, the murder weapon. But recognizing the pattern is the first step. The next step is to fight back. And as the enshittified platforms became more and more unbearable, a new cottage industry began to emerge, not to fix the system, but to help us survive it. So, the world is enshittified. The digital commons has been paved over, turned into a sprawling, parasitic strip mall where every store is a roach motel and the air is thick with the buzzing of pop-up ads. The services we rely on are actively, systematically and predictably getting worse. We are the unwilling subjects in a vast, global experiment in consumer exploitation. A cornered animal has two choices: lie down and die, or fight, and humanity, for all its flaws, is a surprisingly scrappy creature when faced with an overwhelming, soul-crushing problem. We don't always rise up in glorious revolution. Sometimes we do something far more modern, far more capitalist. We look for an app to solve it for us. As the subscription hydra grew into a national crisis, and the enshittification cycle became the defining experience of online life, a new species of company emerged from the primordial ooze of consumer desperation. They were not here to fix the internet. They were not here to start a revolution. They were here to sell us a better shovel for the enshittified hole we were all buried in. These were the subscription management apps, the digital Davids offering to help us fight the corporate Goliath, for a small fee, of course. Their names sound like a team of friendly, efficient superheroes: Trim, Truebill, which later became Rocket Money, Bobby, Mint. Their pitch was a direct, soothing balm on our most acute modern anxieties. Feeling overwhelmed by recurring charges, they asked in their App Store descriptions, their voices dripping with empathy, losing track of where your money is going: let us help you take back control. The proposition was simple and irresistible. You connect the app to your bank account's a sentence that should send a shiver of terror down any sane person's spine. But we were too desperate to care, and it acts as your personal financial bloodhound. It automatically scans your transactions, identifies every recurring payment, and presents them to you in a single, clean, beautiful dashboard. For the first time, you could see all the heads of the hydra in one place. It was a moment of horrifying, exhilarating clarity. But these apps didn't just show you the problem. They offered to be the solution. Their killer feature, the one that made them indispensable, was the cancellation concierge. Found a $12.99 monthly charge for that artisanal cheese of the month club you forgot you joined? Don't want to face the cancellation gauntlet yourself? Just tap a button. For a small fee, or a percentage of the money they save you, they will do it for you. They will deploy their own team of bots, or, in some cases, actual, long-suffering humans, to navigate the phone trees, to argue with the retention specialists, to sit on hold for 45 minutes while listening to a tinny instrumental version of a forgotten 80s pop song. They were digital mercenaries, hired guns to fight the battles we were too tired or too busy to fight ourselves. And it felt like a miracle. It was the cavalry cresting the hill, finally. A tool for the people. We were fighting fire with fire, using technology to beat the system that technology had created. But in our moment of triumph, as we celebrated the slaying of one of the Hydra's many heads, we failed to notice the deep, profound, and painfully hilarious irony of what we had just done. Cause, the sheer number and complexity of modern subscriptions, combined with intentionally user-hostile cancellation processes, created a massive, unmet consumer need for a centralized management and cancellation tool. Gives effect, a cottage industry of subscription management apps emerged, offering to automatically track recurring payments and handle cancellations on the user's behalf, providing a convenient solution to a widespread problem. Gives consequence, this created the ultimate capitalist paradox. Consumers began paying for a new subscription service or a percentage of their savings in order to manage all their other unwanted subscriptions, effectively adding another layer of cost and complexity to the very problem they were trying to solve. The meta commentary writes itself in flashing neon letters of pure absurdity. We solved the problem of having too many subscriptions by getting another subscription. We hired a new middleman to deal with all our other middlemen. We added another head to the hydra, a supposedly friendly head that promised to keep the others in line, but which still required its own monthly tribute from our long-suffering bank account. It is the peak of the subscription economy, a service whose entire value proposition is the fact that all the other services are terrible. It is not a cure for the disease, it is a highly profitable painkiller. And let's not glide past the other terrifying trade-off we made in our desperation. We handed these new companies the keys to the kingdom. We gave them read-only access or more to our most sensitive financial data, our transaction history, our account balances, our spending habits. We willingly gave a whole new category of startup a complete, unvarnished blueprint of our financial lives. We put our trust in their security, in their privacy policies, in their promise not to become the very thing they were fighting against. We solved the problem of exploitation by making ourselves vulnerable to a whole new vector of it. This wasn't a rebellion. This was just outsourcing our own life admin to a new corporate overlord. But for a small, growing number of people, this solution, this band-aid on a gaping wound wasn't enough. They didn't want a better shovel. They wanted to climb out of the hole entirely, paying for a subscription to manage your other subscriptions. It was the ultimate punchline to a joke that stopped being funny years ago. It was a band-aid on a cancer. For the vast majority of us, this was the end of the line. We sighed, downloaded Rocket Money, and accepted our fate as perpetual digital serfs, now paying a small fee to a slightly more benevolent middle manager. We were too tired to fight. The Hydra had won through sheer exhaustion, but for a small, stubborn, and often dangerously idealistic minority, this was not a solution. It was the final insult. They were the ones who had been screaming about this since the beginning, the digital Cassandras, the privacy advocates, the open source acolytes. They didn't want a better shovel. They wanted to burn the whole unshitified plantation to the ground and build a public park on its ashes. This was the open source rebellion. It wasn't a company. It wasn't a product. It was an idea, a philosophy, a defiant, countercultural movement that suggested the entire premise of the modern internet was a catastrophe. I see mistake. The core of the rebellion was a simple but world-shattering question. What if the platforms we depend on weren't owned by anyone? What if they were a public good, like a library or a highway, instead of a private mall designed to trap and fleece us? What if the internet could be a place we inhabit rather than a service we consume? To the average person, this sounds like utopian nonsense. To the rebels, it was a practical engineering challenge. Their weapons were two of the most powerful and least understood concepts in technology: open source and decentralization. Open source is nerd speak for the blueprints are free for everyone. Instead of a company like Microsoft hiding the code for its software in a secret vault, open source projects publish their code for the entire world to see, use, modify, and share. It's a collaborative, community-driven way of building things. Think of it as a potluck dinner instead of a Michelin-starred restaurant. It might be a little messy, but it's honest, and nobody is trying to charge you $300 for a single, artfully ranged scallop. For decades, this movement had been building free alternatives to expensive software, LibreOffice instead of Microsoft 365, GIMP instead of Photoshop. Now, they were aiming higher. They were coming for the platforms themselves, their second weapon. Decentralization was the direct antidote to the enshittification cycle. The reason Facebook can enshitify itself is because it's a single, massive, centralized entity. Mark Zuckerberg can flip a switch, and the experience gets worse for 3 billion people. A decentralized platform has no center. There is no single owner. No CEO. No headquarters. Instead, the network is run by thousands of individuals and small groups on their own servers, all interconnected and speaking the same digital language. This network of networks was given a fittingly geeky name, the Fediverse. The most famous citizen of the Fediverse is Mastodon, the open source answer to Twitter. When you join Mastodon, you don't join one giant website. You join a specific, smaller server, one dedicated to art, or science, or your local community, and from there, you can connect with users on thousands of other servers. The crucial difference? The owner of your server sets the rules for your little corner of the universe. And there are no ads. There is no algorithm force-feeding you rage bait. Your timeline is just the posts from the people you chose to follow, in the order they posted them. It's a radical, almost jarringly simple idea. If you don't like the way one server is run, you can pack your bags and move to another. Taking all your followers with you, you have freedom, you have control. Cause a dedicated community of developers and digital rights advocates, disgusted by the exploitative and centralized nature of corporate platforms, committed to building functional, non-profit alternatives. Gives effect, they created and promoted a parallel ecosystem of open source, decentralized services like Mastodon and the broader Fediverse, which operate on principles of user control, community ownership, and freedom from algorithmic manipulation and advertising. Gives consequence. This established a proof of concept for a user-centric internet, a public option that serves as a lifeboat for users fleeing enshittified platforms. However, its inherent complexity, reliance on volunteers, and lack of a central marketing push has limited its mainstream appeal, positioning it as a principled niche rather than a systemic threat. To the corporate giants, the meta commentary is a stark look at the fundamental trade-off of modern life, freedom versus convenience. The open source rebellion offers you genuine, uncompromised freedom, but it comes at a cost. The user experience can be clunky. Setting up an account requires you to make a choice: which server do I join? A moment of friction that the one-click sign-up of a corporate platform has trained us to despise. It is the digital equivalent of deciding to raise your own chickens because you ray mad about the price of eggs. It's more ethical, you have more control, and the eggs are probably better. But it requires work. It requires you to be an active, engaged citizen of your digital world, not just a passive, slack-jawed consumer. And it turns out, most of us, when given the choice, will pick the path of least resistance every single time, even if that path leads directly into a cage. A snapshot of this dynamic in action every time Twitter, now X, has a major public meltdown, a controversial policy change, a massive layoff. Another bizarre tweet from its owner Mastodon sees a huge, temporary surge in new users. Millions of people flee the burning building, but weeks later, a significant number of them drift back. Why? Because it was easy, because all their friends were still there. The rebellion offers a refuge, but it hasn't yet built a new world that is compelling enough to make the majority of us stay. It's a glimpse of what could be, a flickering candle of hope in the suffocating darkness of the corporate internet. But for now, the darkness is winning, and the result is not a clean victory for either side. We are not living in the corporate dystopia, and we are not living in the open source utopia. We are living in a messy, chaotic, and deeply frustrating compromise between the two. The open source rebellion is noble. It's principled. It is, in the grand scheme of things, a rounding error. For every one person who packs their digital bags and moves to the federated promised land, 1,000 more just sigh, download the subscription management app, and go back to scrolling through their unshitified feeds. The convenience is too strong. The lock-in is too complete. The rebellion is a flickering candle in a hurricane. A beautiful but ultimately doomed gesture against an overwhelming force. And so, we arrive at the end of our journey. We are not in the bright, clean, user-centric utopia the rebels dreamed of. Nor are we in the purely parasitic, ad-choked dystopia of the mid-2000s. We have landed, with a wet, unceremonious thud, in a place that is somehow worse than both. We are living in the new normal. We are permanent residents of the hybrid hellscape. This is the final, most audacious act of the subscription hydra. This is its grand, magnum opus of consumer exploitation, after 2 decades of being told that there were 2 opposing models for the internet: the free, but ad-supported model, and the paid but clean subscription model. The corporations have performed the monstrous act of genetic splicing. They have taken the worst traits of both beasts and stitched them together into a single, horrifying chimera. The central conflict that defined the internet for a generation is over. And the resolution is that we lose, on all fronts, simultaneously. The evidence is right there in your living room. Look at Netflix, at Max, at Disney+. The very services that sold themselves as the saviors, the glorious, ad-free sanctuaries from the horrors of cable television. What are they now? They are platforms for which you pay a monthly subscription fee that still show you ads. Let that sink in. The sheer, breathtaking audacity of it. The subscription was the solution to the problem of advertising. Now, we are being forced to pay for the problem and the solution in one convenient, recurring monthly charge. It's like paying a fireman to stand in your living room and spray you with a hose, and then paying him an extra premium fee to maybe, possibly, turn the water off for a few minutes. This is the glorious paradox we now inhabit. The 2 models have collapsed into one another. The free services, like Facebook and Google, have become so enshittified with ads and manipulative algorithms that they are barely usable. The paid services, desperate for infinite growth, have reintroduced the very ads they define themselves against. There is no escape. There is no clean option left. There is only a spectrum of exploitation. You can have the free but unbearable experience, or you can pay for the slightly less unbearable experience. Or if you are a truly valued customer, you can pay an even higher, super premium fee to access the exact same ad-free experience that used to be the standard, baseline product just a few years ago. They are selling us back the features they took away, and we are paying for them. Cause, the relentless pressure for growth on publicly traded subscription companies led them to seek revenue beyond what could be extracted from price hikes and new subscribers alone. Gives effect, they systematically dismantled their core value proposition by reintroducing advertising into their paid platforms, creating a tiered system where the original ad-free experience became a premium, luxury product. Gives consequence, this has created a hybrid hellscape, where consumers are trapped in a lose-lose situation, forced to pay a monthly fee for services that are increasingly cluttered with the very ads they originally paid to escape, effectively normalizing a double-dipping model where the user is simultaneously the paying customer and the product being sold to advertisers. The meta commentary is the final, weary sigh of the modern consumer. We have been perfectly and completely played. The entire narrative was a lie. The subscription was never a moral crusade against the evils of advertising. It was just a more efficient way to get our credit card on file. It was a customer acquisition strategy, a temporary phase of good behavior designed to get us hooked. Once the lock-in was achieved, the promise was disposable. The enshittification cycle is complete. The Hydra has not just grown more heads. It has taught its heads to work together in terrifying harmony. One head taking our subscription money, while the other force feeds us commercials. Here is your final, brutal snapshot of the new reality. In 2015, the average cable bill in the US was around $100 for a bundle of channels riddled with ads. In 2025, the combined cost of the top 5 ad-free streaming services is projected to exceed $80 a month. To save a few dollars, millions are downgrading to the ad-supported tiers. We have spent a decade cutting the cord only to painstakingly reassemble a more expensive, more fragmented, and equally ad-infested version of the exact same thing we tried to destroy. We are the architects of our own gilded cage, and we are dutifully paying the rent on it every single month. Forever, the game is over, the house has won. So here we are, stranded in a digital paradox of our own making, dutifully paying a monthly fee for the privilege of watching ads we were promised. We never have to see again. It is the triumphant final evolution of corporate ingenuity, finding a way to make us pay for our own annoyance. Now, as a quick legal disclaimer from our high-priced lawyers, who definitely exist, please do not use this highly caffeinated, deeply cynical rant as actual financial or legal advice. It was, however, hopefully a lot more entertaining than reading a 50-page EULA that legally binds you to give up your firstborn child in the event of a server outage. This was a dramatic simplification of a mess that involves economics, psychology, and enough bad code to crash a small moon. If there is another piece of modern life that feels like a scam designed by a committee of evil geniuses, drop it in the comments. We're always looking for the next absurd problem that needs a dramatic and probably oversimplified explanation. And that's how that whole mess went down. Until next time, don't trust the algorithm.